We're going to go ahead and start. For some reason, I think I have an echo. We're good? Okay. Good evening. It's, I can see, 6:32. We're going to go ahead and call to order. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Trumpman,
Here.
Vice Mayor Johnson Sardella. Here. Commissioner Bilt.
Here.
Commissioner Ross. Here. Commissioner Tudor.
Here.
All rise.
Okay. We're going to have to stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, we normally in our workshops, there's public comments, and I noticed it was left off the agenda. I would just like a consensus among the commissioners that we can open that up for a few minutes for the public that came.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and start with public comments. I know there's no, well, there will be in 2 seconds.
Bob Anderson, 11th Place, 119th Street. I just want you to consider on the cost of living raises and really look at that carefully, because we're going to be hit when that passes next year with the reduced revenue. And over the years, we kept looking at with merit raises. And because it has proven with just giving everybody, no matter what kind of a job they're doing, the same percentage raise, it hurts the hard-working people that are trying to do a good job, because the one that isn't working very hard gets the same raise. And also, we got to be careful we don't price ourselves out of employees when we get hit. You need to look at merit raises if you're going to give any raises, and bonuses.
Janie Anderson, 11th Place, 119th Street. To sort of elaborate on what Bob started to say, I feel like COLAs are disincentives. Any raises to me need to be performance-based. You make them performance-based, you have a pool of money so that those top performers, in fact, are rewarded to that level of top performance versus a percentage. Now, I know when the discussion has come up about using the bonus system as opposed to an actual salary increase, inevitably someone will say, well, the tax rate is different. Yes, it is, but the point is, we're facing every year with unfunded things that residents really want to see. We're facing a bigger problem in about a year and a half to 2 years. When that homestead goes up, we see a significant rate decline. We could be talking about losing positions versus at least a bonus. That employee has seen additional income. The city does not have the additional burden. I think it's not a matter of being anti-employee by any means, but it's a matter of being realistic, where it can become a win-win for everyone. And I also strongly urge you that any raises considered, that you do make sure that employee has been here for a year, so that, again, you can judge performance, and that you truly incent our top people. Straight across the board percentages, that's meaningless, and it's a disincentive. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Brett Piper, 1008 Northeast 116th Street. I just want to kind of remind you all that a lot of you who ran for the commission ran on being fiscally responsible. And, we are going to hold you accountable for that. We definitely want to see the village kind of regain some sustainability, increase reserves, We have hurricane season coming up. We need to, make sure that we have the funds for doing, for any type of cleanup, repairs, whatever. Not to say that I know the details on that, but it's just a comment. Also, I was wondering, do we have a budget that the public can see?
I will, if I may address that. Because of the issue of where the financial status was, I know there was a lot of cleanup and trying to move things around. And I know that, as Beatrice had spoke last time, some of the things that were unfunded were not expensed. And so we still have several columns. So there was a lot of work to get the budget together. Unfortunately, that wasn't done until, I think, Saturday night. So unfortunately, they're still doing some stuff. So what I was going to ask the permission from the commission to do was, I know we normally would have 2 workshops in which you publicly get to see everything. And tonight is kind of like a presentation of that budget. I was going to ask the other commissioners, which we will address later, not right now, their permission to go ahead and have another budget hearing if the public desires it, if we have a need to have that.
And we will have a display of the summaries on the screen too, so you'll be able to see it some.
But I know some of you like to review it ahead of time, and I know for a lot of us that was a little difficult. So, but we'll discuss that and just to make sure that that can happen if there's a desire for that to happen.
Okay. So basically, what I am suggesting is just, scrutinize all these little extra things because they do add up. We're in a position where we're looking at possible less revenue down the road, but this may be the point that we can actually save.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Nope. Okay, we'll close the floor to public comments. And we'll open up discussion of the proposed fiscal 2017-18. I know that the manager and the finance manager would like to go ahead and do a presentation on the budget, if I'm not mistaken, and so that everybody can go through it. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Is that on? Yes, it is. Okay. And Beatrice Galliano, our finance director, has been fantastic in putting this together and trying to clean up everything that we've got to clean up at the moment. This is a first run. A lot of this tonight we'll be looking for commission direction. We've met with the commission a couple of weeks ago for a workshop. We've got their priorities, and so we can sort of drill that down and add that to the budget, as well as subtract from what we currently have in there listed. And this is really just our starting point tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Beatrice, who will walk us through it.
And before you do, I just want to make a comment that the attorney made earlier that we spoke to, Attorney Hearn, just so the public is aware. We cannot discuss any financial, anything that would impact anything that's on a collective bargaining unit, which would be the police and public works. So those sections were, if we seem a little elusive on those, there's because they're collective bargaining units. Okay? Thank you.
I believe we do have totals on the screen, but that's it. It's just totals. There's no specifics.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so everyone's got a binder, and Marlon's going to follow along on the screen so that all of the audience can see basically what we're seeing. So if we go to the table of contents, I've basically broken out the budget by fund. So you're going to see the general fund, which is our operating fund, where all of the expenses come out, then your special revenue funds, and your enterprise funds. So if we go to the next page, it's the budget summary for the general fund. And this is your operating account. So this is where you're seeing everything. And let me start off by saying that this budget
Just 1 second.
Yeah.
You cannot see it, can you? Okay.
Oh, is it tiny?
It's very tiny. Is there a way to make it enlarged?
Zoom in.
And if you all want to move up, in all fairness to everybody, if you all want to move up, I have zero problem with you moving up so you can actually see the budget. It's fine. Go ahead, move the chairs and make it so it works for you, please.
And we'll make it bigger next time. But this is the summary, so you're going to see more detail on this in a minute. So I just wanted to go over a couple things. So your general fund budget right now, the way that it's being presented, it's fully loaded with our want list, our wish list. So from here, I can say it's top heavy. There's definitely room for narrowing down and reallocating costs. So this is just a preliminary. We're sitting here, so that we can discuss all of these line items. But having said that, I want you to focus on exactly what's up there, which is the revenue portion. So as you can see at the bottom, and the column that's highlighted is what we're proposing for 2008. The first line item there is your ad valorem tax revenue. And what we've done is we've showed you how we ended the year last year, September 30th, where we are year to date as of June, what we adopted for the current fiscal year, and what we're proposing for the FY18 fiscal year. So the first line item, you can see your property values went up by 10%. In terms of revenue, that's about $168,000. So this is being calculated at your current mill rate of 9.7. And if anyone that's not familiar with how that works, basically the property appraiser comes in, assesses all of your values, and we pick the mill rate. The mill rate, like I said, 9.7. He's giving when the tax collector collects your taxes, they're giving us $9.07 for every $1,000 of your property. So it amounts to a certain amount, but then we are only allowed to collect or to levy 95% of that. And the reason for that is, I'm sure you've seen when you get your tax bills in November, you have an option for a discount. So anyone that's got a mortgage, your mortgage company will automatically pay it as soon as possible, because you have up to 4% of a discount that they can take. Or you can pay it, if you own your own property, you can pay it in March, where then you pay the full amount of your tax bill. So that's the 4% allowed by collections according to law, and 1% goes to the tax collector for his services. So we always budget it at 95%. So having said that, the current year through June, you can see we've collected $1,653,000. We budgeted 1.630. So the reason we came in higher was because when all of the tax bills were due in March, there were some delinquencies, so that goes to tax sale, we collect a little more, so it looks like we over collected. So that's, it's just a little extra money to us, and that's great. It's all fine and good. So we're fully collected as of June, which is fantastic. A lot of cities aren't that lucky because sometimes they'll challenge their assessment. They'll go to the tax collector and fight it. But you're fully funded as far as your major tax revenues. And that is the biggest revenue in the whole city. This is basically what carries your operating budget. So from there, we've got all of the other revenues, which I'll go into detail on them. But I just wanted you to focus on this section, because getting this number right, or proposing and estimating your revenues, is what's going to carry the rest of your budget. This is basically what we can spend. We can't spend any more because there's no more money coming in. So basically, this is our salary, if you will. This is what the village is bringing in, and based on the 2.8 million total, you can't spend more than that. Because every year that we levy taxes or you collect revenue, you can only use that revenue for that fiscal year. So that's where we are. So it's important that we get our estimates right. So if you can scroll a little bit farther to the bottom, you'll see our operating expenses. And here I broke these out, and this is going to get bigger. We're going to go to each department, but I just wanted you to see that we have different departments: our commission, administration, debt service, police, building services, code compliance, public works, parks and recreation, and operating transfers out. That totals 2.6 million, the way that we have it loaded. Like I said, it's top heavy. We're still going to whittle this down, move some things around, but you see there's $164,000 left. That 164, once, at commission's direction, and, I'm sure with some input from the residents, will either be allocated to reserves or to a capital project or several capital projects at your discretion. So basically, right now, this budget has $164,000 of excess, of surplus, that you can do with it as you wish, or you could also, which some cities do, lower your taxes by that equivalent so that you have a balanced budget. So the reason I'm telling you that is because, as many of you know, In November, you're going to be voting on the homestead exemption and whether or not to increase it. This is, as one of the residents pointed out, this is a windfall for your village right now because you've got this increase in your property value, something that we haven't seen, and I think I reported maybe 2 meetings ago. This is the highest your property values have been since 2008. So you're almost back where you were at that point before real estate took a hit. So it's important that you reflect on this 164,000 and put it to its best possible use. And it could get bigger once we make these adjustments and whittle down some of these costs. And like I said, you can choose to put it away, lower taxes. I wouldn't, because we're going to get hit probably big next year with the homestead exemption, I would not recommend, and this is my personal opinion, not council's, but I would not recommend touching the mill rate right now, because the last thing we want to see is a big shortfall next year, and then we just have to increase the taxes all over again. So this is kind of our opportunity to do something for all of you with these funds. So that's basically the summary that we've got right now. And if we go to the next tab, you're going to see a bigger version of your revenues, which I can go over in detail.
Are we going to go in detail? Are we just covering each cover page?
I was just going to
and then
kind of
go-
summarize it and then go back to departments as you see fit.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to, and this looks really tiny, and I'm sorry, we'll work on making it bigger for you. But I kind of discussed the ad valorem taxes and how we got to that number. The village also collects utility taxes for electric, water, and your gas and propane. And these are distributions that come to us from FP&L, and I believe it's the city of North Miami, and then any gas and propane vendors. So these numbers, we actually have gone back and looked at how we ended previous years, how we're trending now, and this is why we're proposing. And I'm very conservative in my budgeting for revenues for the reasons that I spoke of earlier, that these are the numbers that we have to stick to. So there are some revenues here, for example, the next one, which is the simplified communications tax. Those are taxes on anything that's your phones, your landlines at home, and this is a state-shared revenue. So when you get your phone bill and there's taxes, any phone bill that is registered within this village, with an address within this village, we get a percentage of it based on the population. So it's this big, complicated formula that the state does, and then they say this is what you're going to get, and they provide us with the estimates for FY18, for the next upcoming year. So there has been a decline in simplified communications tax, and the reason for that is a lot of people are getting rid of their landlines. They're going, I've got a cell phone, I really don't need that landline, and they're consolidating, or sometimes they just go with their cell phone, and we've lost some revenue because if you have a business and say your business is in Miami, and that's where your phone bill goes, they're getting the taxes. So I would encourage everybody to have their phone bills here in the village. So having said that, we'll move to the next one, which is contractor registrations. I think there was a question about that because I think we thought, well, maybe we were not allowed to collect these anymore. So that might be, we only budgeted $4,500, but I might be removing that. Having said that, the next one is building permits, electric permits, plumbing permits. So these are all building permit fees, and those are kind of hard to estimate only because we have to base it on basically the activity that's going on in our building department. What do we see coming up? Do we see a lot of influx of people redoing their homes? And we have seen an increase in that, but we have to kind of. What I did was, even though we budgeted $90,000 for the current year, we've only really collected $33,000 right now, and that's because the building permits are collected, but 65% of that fee is paid to our inspectors. So it's a correlation. So this number ties directly to what the expense in our building department, and I'll get to that later on. So we kind of budgeted conservatively at $45,000. Then we go down the list, and I'm just touching up on like groups. So franchise fees, again, we collect those from electric, FP&L. The solid waste is from your garbage collection, and the gas and propane. And those are franchise fees paid by these vendors based on agreements that they have with the village. We have some fees, other fees that we collect, plan review fees, home occupation, variance fees, landlord application fees. And again, these have been budgeted based on where we're trending. And we look back at how we've done so that we try to keep it stable. So if we've collected a certain amount in the past, we kind of look at that, see where we are today, and then forecast. So that's what we've done here. Then we have the whole other section of state shared revenues, which are your half-cent sales tax, your fuel taxes, your municipal revenue sharing. And again, these estimates come from the state, and they're based on the sales tax collected within the village and the population number. We also share revenue with local agencies like the crossing guards. We get a portion of that from Miami-Dade County. Law enforcement training, again, it's all based by population, so it's revenue collected by the county that's shared throughout the municipalities that are in it. We have recreational program fees, which are revenues that come to us from the things like the aftercare and the summer camp programming that you have at your rec center. And again, that's a portion. So the vendors or the people who actually run those programs get a certain percentage. So this is the net of that, of what's collected. Some of these revenues that were smaller, I decided I wouldn't even budget for them because you just don't know. Things like traffic fines. While we love that it's being enforced and that the police is upping the enforcement of traffic violations, it's not a solid number that you can kind of count on, and that's not the point. The point is to make the streets safer, not really for it to be a revenue, a source. So the smaller things I've kind of eliminated, like your notary fees, that's not really something that's consistent. It's as needed. So if we collect a little something here, that's great, but it's not anything that I want to base your operating costs off of because it's hard to predict when we're going to get things like that. The last line, which is something I just want to call your attention to, is operating transfers in. So there, for example, in your sanitation fund, your garbage pickup, there's a certain portion of individual salaries that contribute to the preparation of the sanitation fund. So there's a portion of public works, there's a portion of the manager and the clerk's salary, my fee, just because we put these things together and we administer that fund. So we do kind of a cost sharing where that fund then pays back the general fund for a portion of those salaries and any fringe benefits associated, like payroll taxes, retirement, health insurance. So it's broken out so that it's even and it's consistent, and they pay back the general fund for, like I said, a portion of these salaries. So that's your general fund revenues in a nutshell. This is how they were derived. We're actually, when it all is said and done, it's a I can't even read it, that's how little, 3.6% increase, or $97,000 over the current year's budgeted revenues. So that's just the overview. Like I said, this is the most important section, the revenues, because then everything else falls in after that. The first expenditure department is commission. We have increased it by $1,000 or 5%, and that's simply on the promotional activities line item. And the reason that was increased was based on where we were trending. And I believe there were some additional things that we wanted to do there, and of course how we ended the year last year. So that shows a small increase. And I'm just going to go through these, and then we'll go back to different departments. Administration. This budget, we reduced it by almost $60,000, or 8%. And the main reason there was because of the changes in positions, the changes in administration. We have new people who have come in at a lower salary, and all of these salaries, they all compound as far as fringe benefits. So if we lower the salaries, then that in effect reduces the payroll taxes and the retirement contributions and everything else. So it all rolls down. Like I said, there's a $60,000 decrease there. And we'll go over specific line items in a little bit. The next department is your debt service. And this is basically, the village has a loan with City National Bank. It's a 15-year loan. You're currently in year 3, I believe. I think we have another, or including 18, we're in year 3. And that, just like any other loan, it's a principal and interest payment. So while your principal payments get a little bit larger, your interest payments get a little bit smaller. So as you can see, it stays at a consistent $32,000 a year. It's 2 semi-annual payments that we make. But, and like I said, there's another 12 years left on it, but that's pretty basic. And it's set at, just for informational purposes, it's at a 4.25% interest rate, fixed. So there's that. The next budget, or the next department, is the police. Again, we've had a change in administration. This budget currently shows a fully, I think it contains 11 police officers. So as far as staffing is concerned, I think this is, it's pretty fully loaded, and yet it still shows a $48,000 decrease, or 4%. The building department, and if you'll recall, this is directly linked to your building permits. So your building permit department is supposed to be revenue neutral, meaning the money that comes in by Florida statutes, we spend it or we reserve it and put it aside. So I think we budgeted $95,000 for the current years in building permits, and adopted $130,000. So we don't have extra reserves to put aside here. So that's a good thing. You don't want to add too much because it's very restricted as far as its uses. But this the proposed budget captures 35% of, it captures 65% of the inspector costs. So, but having said that, it's still being reduced by $44,000. So you've got some savings there. Code compliance, we have added a part-time position in the current year, or in the proposed budget. So this one does show an increase of $11,000, almost $12,000, mostly due to that position, the addition of that. And because it is part-time, it doesn't carry any of the full-time fringe benefits, the health insurance, or anything like that. So, Public Works, we're showing a small decrease. It shows up as 0, but it's a little over $1,000. We have reduced some costs, like the health insurance across the board has been reduced for the village. We found a better policy, but things have been reallocated, and again, there's room for changes in all of this. Your recreation department budget, we increased it by $36,000. Most of it is in the repairs and maintenance line item, and we'll go over those specific details as to why that line item is bigger. It's basically based on the needs that the manager and I projected, but again, definitely open to your comments and review. The next tab, actually I didn't, there is an interfund transfer there, and I'll go, that's I didn't actually make a worksheet for it because it's just one line. So part of the loan agreement that we have with City National, it requires us to put $2,700 a month into a control account. It's basically a savings account that we have, and it's an I listed it as an operating transfer out. It totals $32,000 a year. And basically, they just want us to put this money into an account. We hold it there, and it's almost like a pledge. So, and they use it towards our debt service. So that's just transferred out. We have that. Then that's really the end of our general fund budget, and then we move on to the road budget. The road budget is completely separate, and the reasons for that are because it's also funded with state shared revenues. The state gives us money, and it's money that you pay every time you're at the pump. So it's your local option gas taxes, and those taxes, that revenue is, the permitted uses for it are anything that's road related, which is why we segregate it from the general fund. So there, you know, again, it's an estimate from the state. They tell us this is what you can expect to receive in 2018. And we also add into their 20% of our state shared revenue, and our operating transfer in from the sanitation fund that I discussed earlier. A portion of the cost to sanitation is covered by our roads employees. So this fund brings in $127,000, and we're showing you how we use that $127,000 to the penny, basically, to supplement or to pay the costs there, which are the road employees and, of course, all of their fringe benefits, plus repairs, maintenance, and operating supplies for that fund. So that's a balanced budget. The next one is your CITT fund, and that CITT is basically the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust. This is a trust that's set up by the county where they collect funds and they distribute them to participating municipalities. They give us a transportation surtax, and their only condition is they give us allowable uses, and they tell us you have to use 80% of it for transportation projects and 20% of it for transit projects. Well, one of the things that we do apply here is our street lighting. All of the street lights within the village are paid from these funds that are granted to us by the county. Everything else is kept. We have it set aside for projects that, you know, that we're going to have some future projects here and use these funds towards those projects. So it can go, and when they give us the allowable uses, basically anything, the way that they said, you know, to keep it simple, they said transportation is anything you can picture that has wheels on it. Or no, yes. And then transit could be anything like bus shelters, sidewalks, street signs, things like that. So they break it down for you. They make it pretty simple. So we just have to come up with some uses for it. And last but not least, we have our sanitation fund, which is your garbage, your solid waste pickup. This budget was approved back in April. So because you do get billed for this on your tax bill, I'm sure you've all seen it. And we lowered it a tiny bit only because, again, we had the personnel change, so we were able to reduce a little bit of the cost while still increasing. Oh, no, the contract stayed the same this year. They did not have an increase in it. They provide us what the cost of the increase is by April, and they didn't have one. So the contract has stayed the same. So based on that and the operating costs, we were able to reduce it by 1% or $2,800. And that, in a nutshell, is the entire proposed budget. And then I'm open to any questions on any particular department. I don't know how you want, if you want to start from the top. And
Actually, just want to first ask the village manager if he has any comments first, if he wants anything he wants to discuss, or just want to go right into it.
Let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
Comments as there are questions.
No problem. Okay, so why don't we go, if it's amenable to all the commissioners, just to make sure, why don't we go by section? Do you want to start, are there any questions on section 1, which is the proposed general revenue stream and expenditures? Is there any questions on that page specifically?
Yes.
Go ahead. Commissioner Ross?
Thank you. So, two of the line items have to do with the home occupation license permit and the landlord permit. And there's not very much revenue coming from them because I think we haven't been really billing out for renewing those permits. And of course, the landlord permit was something that was it was going to sunset, and the commission decided last year to renew it so that we would still have the opportunity to sort of keep tabs on those rental properties and have more regular inspections. But because we were sort of in between administrations, we never really got that, primed to happen. Initially, we were going to use a contractor to do the inspections, and then whoever was at the helm decided, no, we'll do them in-house. But now that we have righted the boat and we're, going in a steady direction, I'd like to see us implement and use those tools, because I think that they're going to be very valuable for code enforcement purposes. Not just so much the revenue. The revenue is pretty much, we collect the fee and we pay an inspector unless we decide to do it in-house. But I think that it'll be a good tool for code, and it has other benefits, maybe for the police to know where the rental properties are and who is in, if there are transients or who is in them.
Absolutely. Commissioner Ross, when I came in back in April, we had a letter prepared for the inspections and for the landlord permits. And we sent that out, I believe, in May, and we are following up on it. We are doing the inspections and all of that. We haven't had a great response, and we did it also. We hit the residents, unfortunately, for 2016 and 2017, because apparently none were sent out in 2016. So we're trying to collect that. So those numbers should go up, definitely. The occupational license, we have not sent that out yet this year. That one we will be getting to shortly.
Okay. The landlord-tenant is also a good way to keep tabs on people who are claiming a homestead exemption but renting their properties.
Absolutely, yes, and we're starting to check those as well. Another thing that we want to do is the Airbnbs. Those fall under, I'm sure, the landlord-tenant, as well. And so that's one of the things that we'll be going forward with on that. So that the people that are running Airbnbs are having to go through the inspections, and the same as our regular landlords and tenants.
And I believe there's also a revenue piece from the state that is allowed to collect tax, I think the hotel. Well, I'll check with that.
Check on that
Yeah, I
one,
think there
yeah.
was some sort, I'm not sure that comes to us or to the state, but that may be part of the revenue sharing. I also just wanted to follow up on what Commissioner Ross said. I think you also put in a line item to actually have an inspector do those inspections in the building department. Just
Right.
wanted to mention that because that is in the building inspection section.
Yeah, we will be, I'm not sure if that's in there yet or not. We talked about that today.
Oh, did we? I'm sorry, I thought it was in there. Okay, sorry.
And it may be. I'll have to go back and look again. I don't remember.
I thought it
for
was
sure.
in-
I
I
don't
thought
wanna
you had it
say
in
that
there.
it is and it isn't, but that will be in there. And so that it doesn't fall to the code officer to do that. So she can maintain her ability or her duties as code officer and enforcing code rather than doing the inspections.
Yeah, and I believe that's supposed to be, I believe it is in the budget, I'm pretty sure, but I believe it was put in the code department, and I think it needed to be in the building department, but I could be wrong. I think
We'll
that's
check
what,
that
we'll
out.
have to check that. Because I think it's a building official that has to do that, correct? I believe.
I'm not sure.
I think it has to be licensed. Anything else, Commissioner Ross?
No, those were my two comments.
Anybody else?
I've got a
Commissioner
couple of
Bill?
questions. One question is the electric franchise fee went down by 22%? Or the
Yes.
budgeted amount? I mean,
Yes, and what I did was I took the year-to-date, and electric franchise fees are usually about 2 months behind as far as collections. So when you look at June, it's not representing 9 months' worth of revenue.
right.
But I did take what we've earned and then prorate it out, and I didn't get us to the 126. Just based on what we're bringing in, it's just not there. So let me see how we ended the year. Hold on 1 second. So I'll have to review those and see why the decrease in usually if we reach out to FP&L, there's usually some type of an explanation.
Right, because it actually looks like it went down in 2017 also. So I'm not, odd, that's all. The landlord application fee, is the amount that we've had, is this a net amount after the expenses? The $1,500 that we've proposed in the budget?
No, and the reason, okay, so we had adopted for the current year a budget of $26,000. Now, I'm not sure, I have to get clarification on what the process is for the landlord fees. I don't know if it's a once-a-year thing that just goes all out all at once. Okay, and we haven't done it, or we put it on hold?
It went out very late this year. It went out in,
Okay.
I believe, May, possibly June, but I believe it was May.
But based on the fact that we've only collected $950 as of June, I didn't want to budget $26,000.
Right, even considering the previous year in 2016, we still only collected $2,000.
So, right.
Yeah, so I don't know
you
where
I'm-
they would have, it just seems odd adopting a $26,000 budget previously if we've,
And
I don't
there
know
might
why-
have been
no,
some type of a program or some type of thing that we were planning on doing and just
Okay. okay.
If I
didn't
could
happen.
clarify, that was the year when we added the inspection fee, because before it was just a permit application fee. So that's why the budget was 26, because we were expecting to substantially
okay, that makes
increase by
sense.
getting that fee,
That makes sense.
which we would pay out to the inspectors.
So it'd be in out, an in-out piece.
So we will revisit that number and get, clearer expectations on what that number actually should be once we implement this. And would it happen early on in the year, October, or,
The landlord,
yeah?
it would probably get up in January.
Okay, so then we would kind of expect to see that revenue in January.
May I ask, because I know when you were doing this, because there are some numbers and things that haven't been expended for FRS and work with comp and things, but for the things that you did know, did you take the current, where we were currently, because I just want to make sure the public knows that you went back quite a
Yes.
few years.
Yes.
You want to talk about that? And then you did the 1.4 times it to where we are today. So you actually did what we expended today. Do you want to talk a little bit about forecasting, just so it's clear how the numbers came up?
Yes, so basically, as I was going through the books we are preparing for the 2016 budget, I noticed that some of the expenses, not the revenues, the expenses were a little light. And the reason for that is that while we did pay them, they're sitting on our balance sheet as prepayments or as payments. So they need to be allocated to the expenses. So basically, for example, somebody took the gas bill and paid it, but didn't say this portion belongs to the police and this portion belongs to Public Works. So on the expense side, what I've done is I went through the vendor files and actually saw what we've paid and kind of came up with our proposed budget on the expense side. The revenues, I went through line item by line item. So the revenues do reflect exactly what we've collected, and which is why I tried to clarify that this portion is the most important because it dictates what our spending can be. So I did go through the line items. All of our revenues are posted to date. Everything's where it should be. You probably won't see any movement in the revenue stream as far as actuals. But, so that's why I cut back on things like this landlord permit. We've collected $950. I didn't feel comfortable budgeting $26,000, but if there's and this is where I need your help to clarify things like this program that I guess we didn't implement and we haven't implemented yet, but there's room for additional revenues there for the upcoming year.
And you conservatively, in other words, you
I
approached the revenues terribly conservatively.
From a very conservative,
Okay.
I'd rather come in over budget on revenues than under budget. I don't want to leave any holes or gaps or anything that's unfunded on the expense side.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the commission budget. Any commissioners want to make comments on any of this?
I guess why would compensation, it should have always remained the same, doesn't it? Every year for the budget, for the commission?
Yeah, it's year-to-date.
No.
Oh, the
Actual 2016 was
because
10,000.
some commissioners donated their salary back.
Oh, is that what happened that year? Oh, I guess, I I don't know, okay.
Not sure.
That's my understanding.
Oh, okay.
From 2016, it was 10 versus 12.
Right, that's,
I believe one of the commissioners.
okay.
gave
And then
back their
since
salary.
then, it's 12 and 12. That's,
Oh, and I had meant to give you some clarification on the format of the budget. What I tend to do so that you can follow along is I gave you all of these worksheets that are behind here. What I do is I take out the summary page and I just kind of take it out of the binder and put it aside, because what the budget worksheets do is it gives you the object code as directed by the state, meaning you have your budget worksheet and the description of what falls into that category. So we have reclassed some of the items and moved them according to the state's uniform accounting code. So, you know, a little nerdy, but I just wanted you to see the breakout, and you can kind of see line item by line item where we are year-to-date, what the proposed budget or the adopted budget is, and what we're proposing. So you can kind of see it all on one page.
Okay.
One thing that we'd like to look at under commission as well is, commissioners mentioned to me that they would like to see an increase in the travel and per diem budget so they could attend more conferences, that sort of thing. Is that something that the commission would like to entertain? The suggestion was to increase that from $1,500 a year to $2,500 a year.
Yeah, I know there were some things that, as the mayor, that I didn't attend because they were very costly and it wasn't in our budget. To me, we have to balance out what is worthwhile for us to attend that may generate revenue or generate other benefits. I don't have a problem increasing the budget. I just want to make sure if we use it, it is for things that are actually going to benefit the village and aren't just for individuals to go out and go about. But I don't, personally, I found that there were some things where I had people say, why didn't you attend? I know historically some people have paid for this, but some of this stuff can be $2,000 a piece. Some of it can be very costly. So I know when I do things, I measure whether or not, and I usually check with people that have gone or attended to see, and I know Commissioner Ross has gone to many of these things as well. Some of them are very beneficial to the village specifically, and some of them are more of networking pieces that have different beneficials, and some of them are just, they don't necessarily produce anything for the village. So I just want to make sure if we do that, the purpose is to somehow benefit the village.
So,
Commissioner
a
Ross?
trip to Tallahassee, you know, between airfare and if you stay a night, it could run $1,000. What I've done in the past is I've asked the village to be reimbursed 1/2 of that, and I pay for the rest. And not everybody could do that. So, you know, it sort of limits what you can get from your elected officials. You've seen, I'm sure you saw yourself, that it's important to have FaceTime up there.
Absolutely.
And be with people and make sure that we're promoting ourselves to the decision makers. I think it's a good idea to increase it. There could be a lot of value up there in this election year. And I think 25 or maybe 3,000 would be good.
Yep. I will tell you that when I was up in Tallahassee, it was incredibly beneficial in terms of who you got to know, the connections you were making, and people you could then reach out to for things that aren't directly beneficial. For example, the homestead exemption. After going up there, I spent quite a bit of time on the phone with people that I had met trying to lobby for that not going through. Well, we didn't quite make it. I know there was the ability to reach out, whereas before they wouldn't have known who I was. I don't think. So.
Okay, so the recommendation is to increase that to 2,500, 3,000, what do you?
You have, depending on, I would do 3,000 to budget, and then we'll be conservative in how we approach using it. That's my thoughts.
Do we have consensus on that, or more comments? or-
2,500.
I just had a quick question about what is the actual increase in the budget for the commission? Just if we could just talk about what's going into the promotional activities, because I'm seeing what was adopted.
Commissioner, could you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Lean into your speaker.
Adopted in previous years was 1,000, it's gone up another 1,000, and it looks like year to date, we're over 1,000, so just what's happening in that line item?
Okay, I actually brought my detail, just in case. Give you a quick answer. In that line item, We had some gift plaques and engraving and trophies that, special events. Reggie, does that ring any bells? Reggie?
That was our former code officer.
Okay, so I guess there was a special event held for
Did we give him a
Reggie,
plaque,
and
maybe?
that
I
came
don't
out
know.
of there. So,
No idea.
The only thing I can remember with Reggie is, I think his dad passed away, so maybe we sent flowers
yeah,
or
there were
something
some,
like that.
there was some gift plaques and a brass plate, some engraving done.
That
and I
could be
guess it was,
for
Okay,
the
that may-
celebration.
requested by commission.
Yeah.
That may have been for some of our wonderfully long-term commissioners who have been here forever,
But if...
who deserve that. Thank you.
If you don't see that line item increasing for any particular reason, I would suggest that we move that $1,000 to your education and training, or to the travel and per diem.
That's,
You know, we reallocate that.
I was going to suggest that it just be
Yeah.
reallocated.
I don't, the other issue is, I know we had some issues with mayors reaching out and wanting to do exchanges of keys. I know there may be initial outlay for that. I do think it's a benefit, and not because we're exchanging keys, but because you're getting to know other cities and getting helpful connections to that. There is a cost with that. Do you want to discuss that? Because you looked into that, I think.
Actually, we did, Mark, do you recall what the cost was on that?
Between the key and the plaque that had to go with it, I believe we looked at $1,000
Okay.
for the entire thing.
But that's for a certain number of them, correct?
No,
For one?
that was the plaque.
One?
The plaque was,
But I thought there were multiple keys with that. Plaque, it was,
I thought they were...
When
I
we
take
ordering
it back,
the-
you're correct.
Okay.
You would be correct. It was the 25 keys that we had looked at. One key was about $32, and then the plaque was an additional $100. And then if you did a bunch, then it was less money.
Okay. So that's
So you're
something that
looking
you
at
decide if you all want to do or don't
about
want to do.
$200.
That's,
and that, we also added $1,000 to the promotional activities. So that's where we go.
so that's up to everybody to decide what you want and how you want to spend that.
Oh, and one other thing, it also included tickets to the Pelican Party? Does that sound?
Yes.
Okay, so that was the other portion of that promotional. So just things that, you know, might be recurring, I'm not sure that you still want to participate in, so.
There was something that we budgeted for, which hasn't gotten expended, and it had to do with the stone pedestal and a plaque to commemorate the log cabin. And I'm just throwing it out there. The last commission approved it. We didn't get to purchase it, but maybe it's something that we should do to make this, you know, give credit to this place and the people who helped fund it.
Would that be in this portion of the budget, or would that be in,
And that's, Commissioner Ross, do you know, was it budgeted for 2017? Okay, then we can try and get that done before the year
Well, I
ends.
think that it was part of the promotional activities that was consumed with other things.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought we had discussed about selling bricks or something at one time to bring money for some of these things.
That was for the foundation, through the foundation. It would be a fundraiser for the foundation, and that would be to actually do the sidewalk in front of the log cabin, taking it out to the parking lot. The foundation they aren't meeting this month. I believe they're not meeting again until September. And at that point, they're going to start with that.
Okay.
so consensus, do you have any comments, sir?
I mean, I definitely could see the benefit of increasing the budget for travel. However, instead of reaching into the additional revenues that we may have, I'd rather try to find cost savings in other departments or within the commission's budget to try to offset that. But I definitely think we need to increase that line item,
The travel or the
travel.
travel, okay. So for the travel, do you want to increase that to 2,500 or 3,000, were the two numbers put out?
I'd be conservative at 25, but I do agree with Commissioner Tudor. I'd like to see it either a reallocation in the commission budget or it coming out from other line items rather than us dipping into the revenue.
Okay. Do you just want to make a note of that and see where we can do that? Okay.
All agreed on 2,500 then.
Yes? Consensus? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Least.
All right. Anything else on the commission budget? Okay. Next is the administration budget. Just so everybody's clear, this does not have any does not have any union issues, so we can go ahead and discuss this fully. Correct? Yes. Okay. Anybody like to start?
Just looking over the administration budget, I guess just one, I know when the public starts looking at this, when I'm looking at the manager's salary at 75,644, I know it's actually at 84 something, I forgot the exact number, but where is that additional amount on the expense side?
In the sanitation fund.
Okay.
So I hope everybody's clear on that. The village clerk, the village manager, and
The attorney and myself.
Yeah.
all four have cost sharing with the sanitation fund to a given proportion. Okay? So that's why the salaries may not look full on the line. It's because they're budgeted, it's split out. Okay?
I guess I've got a question, like with Christian salary, it's 82 now, with Kohler, it's 84. Does that mean it starts at 84 in October?
Cost of living increases are generally given on the first of the fiscal year, and merits are on your anniversary. That's normally how it's done. And just so you're aware, I did load it with the 2.8, which is the consumer price index from April of this year to April of last year. That's what is recommended for all urban consumers for the Miami area. So basically, it's the inflation rate that we're adding. And like I said, this is a top-heavy budget, so we're not, the 2.8 is just what's out there. I can tell you that because we did reduce the salary for this line item, what you see typically in cities, in order to keep that salary range competitive, meaning because, sometimes you fall behind, you start lagging, and your salaries fall behind, you increase that salary line item, whether you give it to the employer or not, by that COLA amount in order to keep it competitive and you don't let your wages stagnate. Because what happens is if you don't increase your salaries on a year-by-year basis, you just completely fall out of line with any comparable city. All of a sudden, you haven't raised your rates or your salary ranges in 10 years, and you go, well, why can't I keep anybody? Because every time you hire somebody, they get stolen because there's somebody offering more. But that's just one of many ways that cities do it. They increase it by the COLA. Otherwise, others have steps where, there's a certain number of steps and there's a minimum and a maximum that you can make. And, how that person reaches that maximum is based on performance or merit or, incentives, whether they get goals accomplished or things like that. So this is just one of many ways. I loaded it with the 2.8% cost of living increase, but again, it's at your discretion because I wanted to give you basically a worst-case scenario.
Right. I guess I could see it, but I could see it starting on the anniversary date of employment.
Well, like I said, the cost of living is based on the fiscal year, and then if you were to change that and say, no, I want to do a merit base, it would be on anniversary dates or higher date, because sometimes people change positions, so the date that you so choose.
Yeah, my experience in 20 years on the federal side is that, we were blessed with a COLA, and that's always at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then a merit increase on our anniversary date of employment. Now, when we, I don't know if we want to be looking at, we're going to have to make the salaries competitive, so I don't know if the right choice is a COLA or looking into a merit system, which is difficult.
I guess my thought is the 2.8%, is fine over a yearly basis, let's say from September of last year to September, to October of this year. But in fact, like with Christian started working in, we backed it into to 1st of May, I think?
Yes, that's May 2nd.
So the people that in fact, like he started in May, so what would be the cost of living increase from May through October? See, that's what I'm thinking.
No, and that makes
that's-
perfect sense. You could choose to award that cost of living on his anniversary, yet budget for it so that you maintain that.
Right.
That salary range. You know, you don't want to lower it too much, or you know, you want to keep it growing with the cost of living, but you don't necessarily, like I said, have to award it or give it out on that specific day.
Right, it just seems odd to me to have somebody, you hire somebody.
Monday,
The
and then-
first, on Monday, and then Wednesday you give them a cost of living increase. But there really hasn't been a cost of living increase, because it's only been a short period of time. That's what my thought is.
I have,
No problem with that.
Okay,
I have a different perspective, so I'm going to share an alternative perspective. And I did read a lot of information of how it's done across the board, and there are different varieties of ways of doing it. One of the problems is we are at 9.7 cap. We have nowhere else to go. And the only thing will happen is if you keep taking salary burdens that are more than you can handle, whether that's, and let me be clear, the employees deserve anything we can give them. That is not my issue. My issue is realistically, we're at 9.7, we have nowhere to go. We're going to be at a $200,000 cut next year. And so you're going to promise salaries, and then what are you going to do? Turn around and yank them away, cut positions? What are you going to do? And while we're counting on tax revenue to hold us over for that, it's almost like a wish list. You're almost trying to do something that you may not be able to handle and then later have to take it back. So my concern is one that's a little bit more conservative. I don't think anybody who hasn't worked here a year should have a COLA. We gave COLAs last year, okay, at 3.1% or 3%, I believe. I think it was 3%. I have the old budget, but I think it was 3 or 3.1. I don't think municipalities give COLA every single year, although we'd like to, if we had the budget or the money or commercial properties, but we are a unique community, and we don't have those revenues. So my suggestion would be that anybody who's worked here, and I'm not going to talk about anybody other than what's in this particular budget here, that raises not be considered for over a year period. And I just think that's the same reason that we shouldn't be giving out vacation and sick time without having them accrue. I think it's the same principle. You earn it. I think the other issue is we do it right now in bonuses because that's what we can afford to do. And I'll be honest about why that troubles me at the same time as suggesting it. And that is when you give bonuses, it doesn't go into the retirement. So you give a bonus, even if it's $500, $1,000, whatever it is, it's a merit-based bonus, it doesn't go into FRS for the employee. And so that is the downside of that for the employee. The upside from a budget perspective is clear. You're not paying FRS and the other benefits. I think for this community, at this point in time, with the homestead looming over us, I don't want to giveth and taketh away. So for me, that is my issue.
Okay. The total of the COLA raises, I believe, is 16,000.
For the general employees,
The
it's
general
16,000.
employees.
Okay, but
So
there's,
And I know there's additional FRS that goes with that, and FICA, and so forth and so on, and I don't have the numbers for that. Certainly it will be far less than the 16,000. Do you know the
oh, right, there it is,
for
16.
that? Do you typically by chance?
Well, I have a total FRS, but it includes.
okay, but there was another part of that, which if everybody will turn to page 6 of 25. And that is we increased the FRS contribution. It's not just the 16,000. We went from 7,000 to 32,000. And that senior management contribution, which I believe is including, from our conversation, 2 employees, you and the village clerk, correct?
Right.
Okay.
I have contractually the 2271 on that. My understanding was the clerk as well as senior management should be getting that. I believe we were paying Maria that. No, we weren't? No.
No. And I have an issue with, there's nobody under that position. While, as I said, I absolutely support the hard work that everybody's doing, so I say this, and it's not comfortable to sit here and do this, but that's a 7.92 and has always been. And that's an enormous increase. So it's not just the 16,000, it's the FRS, which in this case is quite
Well,
significant.
that's different than COLA, so that's another thing.
But it's, at the end of the day, it's the number at the end.
No, and I understand that, but we're taking this line item by line item, so if that's something that the commission wants to give me direction on, then I'm more than willing to listen. But the same with the COLA. I have no problem not getting a COLA. Personally, I'll fight for the other employees, I can tell you that, because we have a lot of employees that realistically with our budget cut and the hit we're going to take next year, they're not getting the COLA next year. And so I think it's important that we do help them out this year.
As I said, my only concern is, and I have no problem with employees that have been here. As you know, the employees that are here work incredibly hard. I don't know if anybody's had the pleasure of going to the Village Hall to see how hard they actually work. It's a tremendous amount of work. It's absolutely incredible. But I do think employees that have been here over a year, I think that's a reasonable on the anniversary.
Yeah, no,
I
I'm
think.
fine with that, too.
Okay.
I would not expect to come in, I've been here 4 months. The last thing I would expect is to get a raise. You know, that's just not.
I know. And I think people that have been here, that have been longer, I don't have a problem with that. I would like us to at least consider putting it as a bonus or discussing that. That's, only because if we look at the numbers and we can afford it as a COLA and it goes into the FRS, I'm okay with that. If, on the other hand, we are going to find that we have issues fiscally, then we could look at the other thing is the merit-based pay. What it does do versus a COLA is it allows you to have a pool of money that you decide how that's distributed by people who work very hard. And in this case, if you put the pool in as a COLA, you'll have that ability to use that money accordingly. And that's really almost a management input on that, and I'd like your input on that.
And I'm a big fan of merit raises as a rule. The employees that we have currently, with the exception of a few of us new ones who are primarily the senior management here in the village, are the ones that have stuck with the village through thick and thin, and manager and that. So, and that's
And
why
commission.
And commission, yeah. I mean, that's why I really think it's important for them to get a raise, be it merit, be it COLA, be it something this year.
Yeah. And so everybody's clear, we're discussing right now only what's in the administration budget, which is the employees in the Village Hall. Okay.
So if I
So-
could contribute some comment on that.
I'm sorry, my head was turned the other direction. Go ahead, Commissioner Ross.
I just pulled up the manager's contract we entered into in May, and it says, at the time of scheduled evaluations, the commission will consider any potential increases to the village manager's salary, benefits, and allowances based on performance. I think that the contract didn't specify a COLA, and it's more based on performance. But of course, whatever it is, we need to put a number, make an allowance for it so that there's a placeholder and an amount.
And I will make a deal with you guys right now. You can forego any raise for me this year if you'll give it to some of the existing, if you can apply it to some of the existing staff.
So by way of that,
I'm sorry?
So by way of that, I was looking at, Miami-Dade County has something called a living wage, which is the wage that they require certain contractors to pay their employees if they're to contract with the county. And it fluctuates, it goes up every year. Right now, it's hard for me to determine whether we're in line with it, because there's a portion that is the salary and there's a portion that is the health benefit. So I didn't allocate it out whether we're meeting those two things to get to full-time employees with health benefits. But for part-time employees who don't have health benefits, we have 4 non-union employees that fall below that living wage.
Okay,
So
I'm going to stop. I'm just going to make a comment, if I may.
I'm
Just very
sorry.
careful, just very cautiously. We are only discussing here, right now, what's in the administration budget here. We're going to be discussing each one individually.
One of those 4 non-union employees is in the administration budget as a part-timer. So, I mean, it's going to be a global discussion, but there is a person in the administration budget that falls in this category, and so that's why I want to introduce it.
You're right, I'm sorry. That's my fault.
And I'd like to see us be responsible employers and try to meet at least that living wage especially for our lower paid people.
And if I may, like we said, for the general employees, there's the 2.8 COLA, which totals about $16,000. Keep in mind that, like I said earlier, these funds are to be reallocated at your discretion. So if you say, you choose to make that number, round it down to 15,000 as a merit base, at the manager's review and discretion, or even a smaller number, because I think you said, that would omit anyone that's hasn't been employed for over a year, then we could still kind of accomplish the same thing, bring up those that are maybe below that level, and just keep those salaries in line, and kind of see what you want to do, or cap it at no more, not to exceed 5% or 4%, which is usually the scoring on merit and performance raises. I want to say it's somewhere between 4 and 5%. So, and again, it's earned on their anniversary date, based on performance, incentives, goals met, attendance, all of these factors, that then you rate it, calculate it, and it comes out to a certain percentage. So,
I'm fine with the idea of a merit raise rather than the automatic, but for those lower paid levels, what we did last budget year was try to meet the living wage, and then we just haven't kept up.
Right.
I think, is that position budgeted here for next year?
I'm sorry.
The one part-time position is budgeted, correct?
It is.
It is budgeted. And it's budgeted hourly at?
$12.
Okay. So, starting with the big picture, are we on consensus that we're, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Are we on consensus that we want a performance or merit-based pay, which is the recommendation of the village manager?
I am.
I am.
agree with the merit-based.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
merit-based.
So everybody agrees on the merit base.
And then if you could just give us a roundabout figure that you want allocated to that 10,000.
Just for a moment before we do the figure.
Okay.
Do we want to decide if we want it to be a bonus base versus a intern the FRS, and basically it's a salary burden that we carry? Because that'll determine the number. That changes the number. Because in some instances,
I
you're
guess
giving more to the
one
employee.
quick question, which is not exactly this. If the cut in homestead comes through, what do we look, do you have an approximate idea of what we're looking at?
We did. I did it several times. I want to say for the village of Biscayne Park, it was in the $300,000 range.
Was it? I thought it was 2. You sure it was 3? That's
Well,
more painful.
We, at first, when the bill was put through, it was to increase it to $50,000. Then we got another bill
75,
that
that's
increased
right.
it to $75,000. So
That's what
we
I-
redid the
yeah.
calculation. So I want to say it's in the $300,000 range.
Then I'm going to recommend we go with bonuses.
I would,
period.
at least the next year, do bonuses, then we can see exactly how we stand, so we don't obligate ourselves for ongoing years. At the end of next year, we'll know what's going on, and then we can see where we actually stand and how much it actually comes to. I would feel better with that.
And we gave 3% COLA raises last year.
Yes, I verified that, yes.
So I would still go with the 3%, just
Yeah.
because I think that's something we could.
But it's, well, 3% overall, but it'll be merit-based depending on what they're like, so.
So that's a
there'll be-
little
there'll be
bit more than it
pool
would have
of-
been with the FRS, but that's my recommendation, but I don't have a consensus here, so I just want to see if there's, Commissioner
Well,
Ross?
Something else to consider is that we have 2 classes of employees. We have contract employees, or 3 actually, contract employees. We have union collective bargaining employees, and then those that have no contract. And so we've tried to, all along, sort of bring them to, keep up pace as we raise one to raise another. But if we're going to go this route, then we're going to have a serious divide between the contract, collective bargaining, and unprotected, we'll call them unprotected employees. And year over year, that's gonna widen, that gap is gonna widen, and people will be left behind.
Why are we going to have a disconnect? I don't understand.
There are, you want to go ahead?
Because by contract, either
Right.
with the manager, say, for the contract, or the union contract, we have things in place that we obligate certain raises and certain things that we'll be obligated on for 3 years out. But if we're not going to keep the non-union and the non-contract people at a pace of increase, even merit-based, if we're only going to provide them with a bonus, they are going to be, that position is going to command a less salary.
Not necessarily. It depends on, I don't think that's correct. I think there are some in cases where they're earning more and some cases where they're earning less. I think it's about what the job requirement entails and what the open market is. We are based in an open market system. So those positions, it depends on what it is. Whether you're talking a clerk or somebody in the office, or whether you're talking about a Parks and Rec position, all of these things are driven by competitive, because if we're not competitive, ultimately we don't get employees. One of the challenges we do face, and I'll agree with you on this, is we are not as competitive as other municipalities because we simply don't have the commercial properties. And until we address our diversified revenue stream, which is not part of tonight's conversation, but until we find a way to do that, because clearly annexation did not work, until we find an alternative to that, we're going to be stuck in this cycle of employees. And I don't think a 3% when I get a 20% jump going to another city is going to still hold me.
Well, for
So-
example, we've had that part-time clerk position vacant for quite some time, and we've tried to fill it. It was filled, the person had to leave. Other qualified people came and applied, but they couldn't accept the salary.
Because it's
the
part-time.
low salary that we were offering.
Because it's part-time and not full-time.
The reason was they could not accept the low salary.
Yeah, the salary we were offering for that, people were saying, yeah, sorry, I can't do it for that. I can go to a temp agency and make more.
Okay, but then the decision might be to find a different avenue to go rather than, what I'm trying to say is if I'm going to earn $20 an hour or 12 to 14, the 14 isn't going to hold me. So I'm going to go to wherever the higher pay is. That's just what people do. So if we have an issue where we can't, where the position we're funding is inappropriate, then we need to look at that position and what we're doing. I don't think raising it to a couple of dollars is going to change that outcome. To what end, for what purpose?
And I guess my thought is, I'm not saying to do this forever, at least it's for this next year to see where we stand in a year's time. Next year, when the budget comes up, I think the election will already have happened,
Yes.
and we'll know what we're actually going to face and what we can do.
And that will be 2 years in a row that they've got an increase in pay, so we will be keeping up with something. Even if it's not perfect, it's still the 3%, which is 0.2% over what you were asking.
Right.
Okay? At the same time, would do the bonus piece and the merit base as well, so that there's an incentive. That's what I'm suggesting. I don't know what the consensus is. Commissioner Tudor?
You know, probably what makes the most sense, because I guess, this is the difficult part. We want to do what's right for the employees, because they've been dedicated to us, they're putting in the hours. At the same time, we got to look at the real world, the fact that we're going to be taking a big hit. So, given the COLA, the problem with that is it's going to raise the salary level, which is going to impact the benefits, and then we're going to be stuck at that salary level next year with the new budget we're working on. So, what does make the most sense is getting the employees that financial incentive, bonus, merit bonus. It doesn't impact the actual line item salary, and it won't impact the increasing the FRS or any of the other numbers there, but it's additional monies in the pockets of the employees. So
And it basically
I'm fine
puts a placeholder so we know where we're going to be.
yeah.
And we'll do that for people that have been here for 1 year and on the anniversary.
And we can always revisit a COLA once we develop a beautiful commercial area and all this revenue's coming in.
Then we can evaluate a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to add, because I agree with Commissioner Tudor, and I forget who it was, it might have been Brad who stood up in public comment. What I would hate to see is if we stick with this COLA and we do get a big hit, I don't want to it's worse if we have to face the fact of letting people go than raises or bringing everyone up to a certain level. I know we're trying to stay competitive, and I think we need this year to see that so that we actually can, because I don't want to be on the side of cutting positions because we're overspending here. I'd like to see the money go into the reserve so that we can, once we know where we are next year, we can move forward and make better decisions with what our salaries are going to be at.
Yeah, this would be a much different argument to have if it was not for the homestead issue.
And $300,000.
Right.
I mean, we could go ahead and, that, to me, I would be pushing against the bonus and the merit system and be pushing for the COLA. But it is, you know, it's a brutal truth that, you know, we may be tackling that issue, and then we'll be sitting up here if we do the COLA and then saying, we don't have the funds for this, we're going to have to reduce this department by one person. Or, and, you know, that's going to be
a whole
tough.
lot worse than,
Yeah.
yeah. Commissioner Ross?
And so with regard to the concept of paying a living wage and being responsible employees, are we willing to leave these lowest paid employees under the living wage, or do we want to bring them up?
I would recommend that any employee we have that's under the minimum living wage, we bring up to that.
I understand it's not the federal and it's not the state level. The county has
The county, Miami-Dade.
this, right, calculation that they make.
I have no objection with looking at what that would do. My issue would be to make sure we're being comparable with the bargaining units at some point. So we just have to be careful how we're doing this so that it's equitable. And it's also based upon the position that's there. At the end of the day, nobody here, I think, is objecting to somebody earning a living wage.
I mean, I would like to see the next meeting we have to see if we're bringing everybody up, those below the living wage, if we bring those up, you know, what are the numbers at, where are we at?
Right.
Because, you know, there may be, you know.
And we may or may not be able to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I would like to try to do everything possible to get everybody to, at least to that level. So if it means trying to pull monies from other areas, I just don't know how much of an impact it would really have on us, you know, next year when we're looking at the homestead issue. I don't know if it would have that much of an impact.
Cut the position, right, we have to cut a position.
So I don't know if it would have that much of an impact until we get the numbers.
Right.
But I would like to try to do the living wage if possible.
Okay.
And just to, I wanted to point something out, that based on the effective date of this bonus, it looks like the eligible employees, the general employees that are eligible, most of them, if you were to base it on their anniversary,
It's not a living wage.
it's later in the year. So you're not paying a full year of this, oh, wait, it's a bonus, so it's a one-time payment anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
even compounding, so ignore that.
Yeah,
but-
but it would be on the anniversary date only for people who've been here at least a year, which may or
Right.
may not affect this particular department.
Exactly.
Okay, that's,
Okay. All right, we're good? All right, next.
Okay, so we have consensus then. It's
Yes.
merit-based,
3%.
it's a bonus, and it's 3%, correct?
Correct? Up to 3%?
Up to
correct.
3%.
Up to 3%. And it's for those people who've been here, who've only been here within they have to make the year mark to make that on their anniversary.
I think what my wife's firm does is, it's the pool of money of 3% of whatever this all comes to, 3%. And then it's actually divided up depending on, since it's merit-based, some do not get the entire whatever it is, some
Right.
get a little less, and then it's,
Correct.
so it evens
You're
out, right,
graded.
whatever it is.
You're
Right,
graded,
okay, that's,
exactly.
yeah.
It's up to the marriage.
And we'll see the calculations for the living wage.
Yes.
Okay, anything else in this department? I think I had a couple of things, so,
I had a question, I'm sorry.
No, no,
Mayor.
please.
Just in an increase that I saw in, I think it was professional services.
so what page?
If we go to page 9 of 25.
For those of you in the
yeah.
audience,
The IT.
since it's not up there right
Yes.
now,
The IT, it seems to be a significant increase.
just for everyone in the audience's sake, and for those going to be watching later, professional services, Municode, codification, IT, lobbyist, legal counsel, and pre-employment screenings. And you're referring to?
The information technology line item,
Yeah, that,
it's a pretty significant increase, what's being proposed for fiscal year 2018. I'm trying to just understand what's going on in that line item.
Yeah. Extrapolation of what we have.
The 18 to the 24? I think it's based on their monthly rate. I'm going to review it right now. Let you know.
While she's reviewing that, just so we can keep moving, if everybody could turn to page 6 of 25, which is the retirement contributions. This was the senior management issue. I just want to make sure we do or do not have consensus that the senior management, which would be Mr. Manners, will be earning 22.71, and then everybody else is back at the 7.92, which is consistent with what we've done historically. Are we in consensus on that?
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
Yes.
I apologize.
Within this, the way it's structured now, both the village clerk and the village manager are at senior management level at 22.71, not at the 7.92. I'm recommending that the village manager stay at the 22.71, which is senior management, and that the clerk will maintain what it's always historically been, which is 7.92.
I always thought that the FRS was determined by FRS depending on the position and the duties and the, right?
There are 3 classification codes that apply to the village. One is senior management, one is regular class, and then there's a special risk, which applies only to police officers. So those are the 3 that we work with, and those rates are given to us by FRS. They're effective from July to June of the following year, and then they increase again. So what's reflected here is the rates that have been provided for the next 12 months, beginning July 1st.
Okay. So understanding that the second position here is calculated at a regular class?
That is what it's always been.
It's typically, I was under the impression that it had been calculated as a senior management rate. Apparently I was wrong on that.
Well,
so-
typically your manager and clerk fall under senior management. It's not, by any regulation, but that's typically what you see. So I had gone back and looked at what was being paid and came up with that. But, the regular class is usually like clerical or your office staff.
Right.
things like
And
that.
considering that our village clerk is not only our clerk, but she's our procurement officer, she is our HR person, she is, wears all of these other hats.
And they're
I think
senior
it's-
hats.
Yeah, they are, and there's very little oversight, because there isn't another person above her that she can go.
There's also nobody below her either, and I think historically we've done this, and this comes back to what we can and cannot afford. This is not a small chunk of change. This increases your budget from $7,500 to $32,000. According to what, I'm sorry.
That's year-to-date.
$28,000, excuse me, $25,000 to $32,000. It's a $7,000 increase if I'm doing the math correctly.
I'm sorry. The one line item, regular class at 7.92%, is right now $4,000.
If you take the difference in the two, and I was given those figures by Mr. Manners as well as Manager Manners as well as the thing, and I was told it was $6,000 to $7,000. I just can't support that, I'm sorry, I can't. That's not something we've done historically, I don't think it's something we can afford, and it's not,
Yeah.
and we also increased that salary from $42,000 or $43,000, which is what it was budgeted last year, to $50,000 without any approval from the commission. That was automatically done when the hiring happened. So I think that's another issue. And it's not about somebody's worth. It really is not. These people work incredibly hard. I think it's a salary burden that we have to decide whether or not we're going to take.
Understood. Understood.
Could
But I know
I-
that we received an email today from the clerk, and I looked at it on my phone, tiny print, and it said, "Village clerk, resignation letter." As it happened, it was a resignation letter from someone on the code board. But I nearly cried, because I thought, now we're having everything held together, better. We're getting to a better place. And if we lose someone in that senior position, we lose a lot of talent. And I want to
Okay,
maintain.
then where are you gonna take the $7,000 from?
Competitive
Then-
with the
But
rest of the cities.
what you giveth, you have to take it away from somewhere else. So all I'm going to ask you, if you're going to support that, where are we going to get the other $7,000 from? Where are you going to get it? You can't keep giving out. There has to be the other side. Unfortunately, that's what balancing the budget is. And so There are a number of projects that we're trying to do and things that the residents want and other things. I just don't see how we can continue to do that and pick, and then, sit there and dime over 3% on a COLA. We're talking from an 8 to a 22% retirement, or 20, almost 23, 8 to 23 difference every year.
We can look at, areas to cut as we go through individual budgets down the road if you want.
I'm recommending we don't do this. This is something we
So
haven't done
this-
historically.
This department, right now, as the budget is presenting, has almost a $60,000 reduction from last year's budget. We're not increasing over last year's budget $60,000.
That's
Do
true.
you see what I'm saying? This
Yes.
department has shrunk by $60,000. So there's a savings right there.
At last year's budget of 22,000, what was that percentage?
I will tell you. We have the current year. I want to say the rate, right now it's at 22.71, and I believe it was 21. Actually, I have the budget here. Senior management was. And by the way, the IT, I just found that one. The IT is tracking at $2,000 a month. 600 of that is for our IT contractor. And then we also have antivirus software fees that we pay on a monthly basis. So at the $2,000 a month, that's why I increased it to $24,000.
We're paying $1,200 for antivirus protection?
Between that, we have server protection, software plan, and the IT consulting service.
That's not, let me just be
For a
clear,
total
that's
of
not for the
2,000.
software we're using for the website. That is just the fees for antivirus? I think we need to look at that.
That's
That's
really-
outrageous.
okay. Let's go back. So last year was 20, and that was, I'm sorry,
Sorry, let me go back. Oh, finance, wrong one. I want to give you the right class code.
I just spent money for a bit different, I'm not going to tell you what I spent. We can,
21.77.
so if it was 21.77 last year,
So it went up about 1%.
21, so what up 1%, so why did it go up from 22,000 to 28,000? It should be
Because I
1%.
calculated the manager and the clerk's salary at the senior rate.
And previously, the clerk was not.
The clerk was
at
not
a regular
previously.
rate.
Oh, that's, okay, that was one of the questions. The clerk was
And
the regular
also,
rate. Oh,
this,
okay.
this also shows only a portion of it, because don't forget, a portion of this is coming out of sanitation. We take all the fringe benefits.
right, so there's more in sanitation.
Yes, there's more.
So in fact, the retiring contributions are not in fact 32,000, they're more than 32,000.
Well, if we look at our salary schedule that I provided, we're looking at about 35,000. What is that, 20 and 11?
$30,000.
Like $32,000
So it's 32 for just those
for
two.
those two positions.
So the big change is in the clerks, I guess.
Correct.
Yes.
Reclassing her from regular class to senior management.
And was that a contractual?
They-
That was
they-
not contractual. I was under the understanding that the prior clerk had that. But I support it, quite frankly. I think if we're going to lose our clerk, hopefully not tomorrow, she's down there nodding, if we,
Yeah, that's fine.
And I'll
But
tell you
Friday-
that the former clerk it might have been in her position as acting manager, but that's how, when I went back through the FRS records, that's what I could see so that's why I did this.
Yeah, and you said the FRS has the descriptions of the different categories, what qualifies for,
Yes.
yeah, because I'd like to take a look at that, because if the job description meets those qualifications, what I don't want to do is deny somebody what they're due.
Then we
And
have
we
to
are-
find,
and we
then we
already
need to
have-
find 10,000 or whatever the
Well, we-
difference
and we
is
already
and
have a-
someplace else to cut.
Well, we've already got a savings in the administration of 60,000.
60,000.
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
and that's with that already factored in.
I-
Like I said, my
I
decision
understand what you're
really,
saying.
yeah, my decision really determines on what they categorize for the special, or not, the senior management service class, what that definition, what they determine to be that level.
So
Agreed.
you will research that?
I'll go on the website and
Okay.
see if.
Just tell us what,
Yeah.
could you tell us what it is? Which site it is?
Yes, it's myfrs.com.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't, our clerk is not a chartered position as well?
It is
Not, I just want to clarify, it's not a chartered position, so, okay. Thank you.
So that's going to be an open item to decide
Yes,
next go-around.
correct.
I mean, we might find the savings actually if, from the IT, because that 24,000 is a bit high, so we reduce that.
Yeah, and we'll definitely be looking at that. That's a contract item not reviewed yet. That's just one that just.
Yeah, and I remember speaking to one or two of the employees, and they said the IT came out to fix the phones or something. They said he was out there 4 times and he could never get it right, so I'm just not
And
quite
he's
sure.
charging, and they're charging every time they come out.
And they're charging every time they come out. It's, I had
very
found that where I was downtown, they were charging me traveling time from Cutler Ridge, because that's where their office was. And I said, you guys have got to be out of your minds. So
From my
but I don't
understanding,
know.
though, is that a lot of the stuff is done remotely. I know I've had them help me set up my telephone to get
Yeah.
my emails on, and they're very responsive.
And same here, next level who we use, that, from that perspective, I think they're pretty reasonable for the service that they do give us. We can get them on the phone, day, night, whenever, and they respond quickly. I'm not sure about all of the antiviral.
I can find out about
extra
that.
add-ons, and that we can check into.
Yeah, well, I've called as well and not gotten a response, so we'll talk about that
You've
later.
not gotten a response?
No, called twice. Didn't get a
And
call
I
back.
mean, it's definitely something that we can look into with the contractor or the vendor, but as you can see, just from the year-to-date, that's exactly where it's
No,
tracking.
you're,
We were
you're,
gonna
Yeah,
go-
no, you're
we were gonna
right.
go over
you're
budget.
right on, you're right on target where it is. The question is, why is it there?
Should it be there?
You're right.
Right.
Well, and the other thing that's, I know you're following the tracking and it's trending that way, is I noticed phone system,
Yes.
for 17, it was 5,400
What
was.
page, I'm sorry? what page are we-
Page 12 of 25.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Avaya, it was budgeted at 5,400, and this year we're proposing 10,000. So what caused that increase? Because that's a substantial increase.
I will look into the details of it as to what that increase was, but I'll tell you now that the change, and if you see from one year, from the current year adopted to what we're proposing, it was adopted at 31,000, and we're lowering the overall budget to little under 20,000. And that's because in the current year budget, you have this department called General Government. And this General Government department was basically a catch-all for the commercial insurance, the phones, just things that weren't allocated to any particular department. What I did was I took all of those expenses and I said, well, certain things should be placed in certain departments. In other words, our auto insurance, for example. We know how many cars we have, so if there's 16 vehicles in the police fleet, that auto insurance should fall under the police vehicles. So I did that with the phone system. So the general government had all of these lines for, the Comcast for public works and recreation, and I said, no, let's put those in public works and recreation. So you see this budget, it looks a little confusing where there's zeros budgeted, and it's because they've been allocated to those departments, but in essence, we're dropping the budget by over $10,000.
Because, I'm wondering if there's savings that we can find in
Well,
some of these
And
vendors.
your phone system is leased.
Yeah.
It's not purchased. So I believe if I'm not mistaken, there was an increase in the equipment lease cost, and that's why I increased it. or, and they also changed names. It was Avaya at one point, and now it's like CIT.
It just seems odd, because as time goes on, your phone system is worth less and less, and they, of course, are increasing it. And leased or not, that doesn't make any sense to me.
It would be helpful, too, if you looked at some of the contracts that are the most costly. I know you may not be able to get
I
through the
can-
book this thick, but sitting in Marlon's room. But if you
Yeah.
could go through those contracts as much as you can, and look at our most expensive and costly contracts and see what we can do to shave them, because it would be nice to give the money to other things like employees that deserve it, rather than
Date
giving it
seven.
on the outside. And then I have no problem, I just need to make sure we're balanced.
Yeah, I mean, I would even look, I know it seems like small amounts, but small amounts add up over time.
They add up a lot.
Is even our agreements we have with Comcast, I mean, in between the different buildings, we're spending over 11,000.
Comcast, yeah, we've
it
talked about
doesn't-
that for years. Comcast is ridiculous. We have 6 or 8 different bills we keep
Yeah.
signing checks for. That needs to be consolidated and negotiated in a different manner.
And in the franchise agreement, they're supposed to give us an outlet in every building for free.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In their franchise agreement, they're supposed to give us one outlet in each building for free. I'm not sure what standard outlet it is, I mean, I'm not sure what speed it is, but there's supposed to be one. I was looking through something a couple of weeks ago, and I said, interesting, I wonder why that's, but it was in there, so.
Commissioner Ross?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Bill, you're saying, in the franchise agreement with Comcast?
With Comcast. It seemed very odd to me,
But it's an
but it
agreement.
was in the agreement.
Okay. I don't think I've seen a franchise agreement with Comcast, but
Yeah, it was a franchise agreement, it was a,
one of the things that we had in our budget last year, and I think it would be now in this department with the combination of the two, general administration and general before, was a $2,500 donation to the North Miami Senior Foundation. I didn't see that in here. Are we carrying that forward?
We did, it's there, it's budgeted, but we did not budget it for the upcoming year. Neither of us were quite sure what it was, to be honest. We were like, what is this? We haven't spent it.
Right.
So, but, so I'm glad you brought it
I
up.
think,
And Commissioner Ross, you and I discussed that, I think it was last week.
Right, yeah.
And so we do need to add that back in. And
Yep.
so-
I don't think we do, so I'm going to disagree with that.
Okay,
I think
well then
North Miami.
You guys take that one.
Yep, I think North Miami,
Yeah.
we've been giving money to them. I don't think, I just don't see the reason to expend that. It's not that I don't believe that's a wonderful thing. I think North Miami has enough revenue to handle that themselves.
And that's
This
on
is,
page 20 of,
Just for those, on page 20?
Yes.
Just for anyone who is not aware of it, as long as I've been on the commission, and I don't know for how many years before that, the village has always given $2,500, never increased it, and it's put into the budget, and then by a resolution that has to be approved by a supermajority, we give the $2,500. And that has nothing to do with the city of North Miami. That's a separate 401c3 organization.
It's the organization that
that-
does the seniors?
That does Wheels for Meals for the seniors. They do calls, buddy calls to make sure, check on people, make sure they're taking their medications and things like that.
And it would
The-
actually benefit our residents as well, who are
The-
seniors and who are homebound.
Right. The CEO of the North Miami Senior Foundation has come to our, not the budget workshops, but to the actual budget hearings, and usually reports on how many meals they've done and the benefits that they've provided to local residents. I recommend that you reach out to her. I'll try to find you her contact information. I've never spoken to her other than in this kind of a venue, but I think that as our seniors age, and many of them serve first as volunteers with North Miami Senior Foundation and then become their clientele. I think
Okay,
it's
I
a
misunderstood. I thought it
very
was the city.
valuable benefit.
I thought it was City of North Miami.
For the cost of it, I think that it's a very valuable benefit.
so we haven't paid it out in the current year, and you said it's triggered by a resolution? So,
Yes, and it usually happens at the end of the year
Oh,
when
got
we
it.
go, oh, we didn't spend that money that we
Got it.
budgeted, let's do a
Right.
resolution.
okay.
I guess one of my questions, we were talking about Comcast. Year-to-date, it was almost $7,000, but we're budgeting 2,500? That's on page 12 of 25.
Yep.
I think she expensed it to the department.
Have we in fact, oh, is that what's happened? No, because
It's Village Hall.
it says Village Hall, but then it also says Public Works, and then it also says Rec, and all those are now zero.
I believe that also includes a portion of the police's, because I want to say the bill was for the entire building, I want to say.
We have two lines coming in. We have one specifically dedicated to the police department, one dedicated to Village Hall.
And I think the $6,900 year-to-date encompasses both.
And you split it out, right?
Well, we didn't used to, but we will in the future.
So this doesn't show it being split out?
No, but it does for the proposed. That's why we're
No.
If you look in there, it's not here, but you have to go into the other sections to find it.
Okay.
Correct? Am I correct?
correct.
So if it says 0 here, and you go to that department where it says 0, and you go and look, it's going to be in that number,
Okay.
okay?
Because it seems, I'm trying to think what I've got at my house. I've got something like 125 gig service, 125 meg service, and it's $74 a month.
It's a different price for residential and commercial.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
but it shouldn't be that, I would think, it just seems to be a little extreme, but I'm not, we could take a look at the bill and actually see what it is.
And we will be looking at all
Okay.
of those as soon as I
Yeah.
have a minute.
Looks like it's trending at about $165 a month for Village Hall.
It might be beneficial at this point to bring the Comcast in, take a look at that contract while we're in this negotiation, and tell them, explain to them that many of the commissioners have questioned why we're doing this, and see if we can't figure out what we can do with that contract, because that's always been an issue. I know I've spoken to several former commissioners, and that seems to have been, we keep kicking that can down the road, and that's a road that's could be paid to an employee for salary and monies, and I would rather see it go to them.
I would too.
Okay.
Well,
Before we leave this department, can we just circle back to that North Miami Senior Foundation and see if we have consensus to put that into the budget, $2,500?
yeah, I think we should add
Yep.
that to the budget.
Yes?
The 2,500 for the North Miami.
Got it. Okay.
And just one last thing on I'm going to nitpick the little nickel and dime stuff, but I would really like to see a little cost analysis done about if we were to, instead of paying the phone allowance, if we were to actually have a corporate account and issue government phones or city phones.
I did a little calculation on that, and I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit,
Yeah.
because I think there is a question of who gets it and who doesn't get it, and whether it's in the I'm sorry, can't talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, went down the rabbit hole. What I did is I looked at what the average cost of a phone is if I wasn't in a family and I wasn't getting the great break and I had to pay it for myself. And taxes, tags and whatever, about $60, $65, depending on where you get it from. But you can get a phone for $50, $60 now a month. And I figured out what is the average employee using that phone for and what kind of employee. And the averages ended up, for me, about $10 a month if they're using it at 20%. Well, nobody wants to give a benefit at $10 a month because it's kind of almost insulting. But $40 a month is essentially paying for almost the entire phone service. So my recommendation is to cut it to 40. We are going to be giving bonuses and things like that. I think it's already kind of built in. I think $20 a month is about right, depending on the position. Now, there are some positions that use the phone 24 hours a day. The manager knows which ones those are.
The police chief does. You were speaking to him at 7:30 this morning?
Was it? You called me. Wait a minute, this one's, did you call me? I called you, I can't remember.
So, I mean,
No, there's some of them, I'm not arguing that. I'm saying some of them are using them, some of your senior management are using them regularly. I know I've bothered poor Marlon at ridiculous hours of the evening, so there are people that are using them regularly. And I think you need to look at that and just be reasonable in its distribution and consistent.
Well, with the phones, one thing we also have to consider is that when you use it for business purposes, it's a public record. So.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so if we were going to keep that system in place, I would prefer to actually have a dedicated line. That's what I've always experienced. That's what I currently have. I have my iPhone from work and my personal phone.
The only problem with that is you could look at it and see if it's any less costly. I think it ended up being more costly.
Well, what I found when I did some research early on was they have corporate accounts, and for example, there'll be $90 for 2 lines, and then 400 for lines 3 through 18.
You're
And
the
all of a sudden-
auditor, I take your word for it.
And all of a
You tell me
sudden,
what
it breaks
works.
down like $490 a month, and so when you do that and you bring that out, it's actually substantial. I mean, we're talking about over a year, $5,000-$6,000 potentially. So now, things always fluctuate and all that stuff, but that's one of the things I would like to kind of, as we're doing this, reach out and find out if there's something there that we might actually get some, not only cost savings, but also, like I said, from a public records standpoint.
A lot separate of a.
Yeah, because the last thing I want to do is have to turn over anything from my, somebody comes to me and say, oh, we've got a records request, I need your text messages from your phone that you use for government business. Oh, well, it's my personal. Well, hand it over. I mean, that's always a potential issue there.
And this is your field, so I'm going to defer to your expertise in
And
this.
that is actually
Yeah.
what is the most common place for the public records reason out there. And I'll tell you one thing about the $40 stipend per month, it's also taxable because it's on their paycheck. So we're paying FICA taxes on it. It's not FRS, it's not
Yeah.
pensionable, but it is taxable. So, it compounds, it does compound. So I think it's very comparable and it's very reasonable if you get a business plan with shared minutes and, data. And it even, in some cases, eliminates the need for these air cards because then you have a hotspot that you can connect to. So it kind of all consolidates and it's really kind of the way to go. So aside from the fact that you have to carry 2 phones, your personal, it kind of makes more sense.
Vice Mayor?
And I agree with that, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I was about to raise a question about the air cards. So I would like that looked into to see if that would work out. And also, in my line of work, I agree also with keeping business and personal separate for those public records requests because you'll wind up turning over your personal.
Yep.
So I do agree with that assessment and whether we can look into that and see if we can get savings there.
Commissioner Ross?
So, yeah, I have a couple of thoughts and we're not talking about collective bargaining, but there might be something in those agreements, especially for the police, that says it's part of the deal, it's part of their deal. I
I'm
don't
sorry,
know.
but I was asked by the attorney not to discuss that at all tonight, so I'm just reiterating.
saying something to consider. And without talking about whether it's in there or not, I don't know. But if we go the route of having sort of a corporate account with the key personnel having phones, maybe we have room in the budget for 5 more so that the commissioners could have their commissioner
Absolutely.
phones?
That's also very much the norm.
It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
we
So I
find
think
out-
you have a direction on that?
Okay.
The only thing I'll also add to that is, I wouldn't know what to do with that. The other thing I would add to that as well is to make sure we have a policy in place for that use, because I do know that larger institutions do that. They have a policy of what that phone can or cannot be used for, so we're just very clear on that up front.
I guess I've got 2 other questions. Is the air cards, are they the cards that you put into a laptop?
No, they're actually these little devices. They're a little bit smaller than a cell phone, and you just kind of keep it. It's almost like a tiny modem that you keep around with you, and it provides you Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we just have.
Wait, it provides you Wi-Fi?
Yes.
Oh, it's a cellular for the Wi-Fi.
It's mobile Wi-Fi.
We just had them at work, and actually, we just turned all those in because the iPhone, we have to use as a hotspot.
That's what I was saying, yeah, using the iPhone.
So it really, it knocks out so many issues. I mean, these phones that you would get, they're already programmed with your
Right.
business email, so you have your email at the ready.
Right.
It makes it that much easier, especially during hurricanes or storm preparation, or you give out this list of phone numbers with all of your essential personnel on it.
Right,
and,
that would make-
it's just,
What are we spending $2,500 in here for audio visual?
Is that in here?
Yeah.
I think that's here.
This page is 22 of 25?
Getting old, my eyes not working. I'm getting too old, my eyes aren't working. I need longer arms, I think.
Here.
What did you want longer arms? It's cold in here. That depends. Can we reach consensus whether it's hot or no? Audio visual equipment log cabin.
Oh, okay.
I believe that has been That was just a reallocation. Originally, it was in the communications page, it was on page 12.
Right.
And because it's equipment, I moved it to operating supplies. But you had budgeted earlier, in the current year, almost $4,600 for audio equipment log cabin.
For what?
It's all of.
It was to replace all of these microphones.
Yeah.
And so, but I've spoken with John Challenor, and he's going to replace them all with a better grade, and he's going to do it at no cost to us.
Right, because these are a year old?
They're
Year and a half?
2 years old since we,
Yeah.
rededicated the log
Okay, so he's going to
cabin,
he's going to,
Yeah, he's,
okay.
Most kind.
not that these are horrible, but he says he can upgrade them for us to a better quality at no cost to us.
That will work.
So I'll be holding him to that.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Thank
So
you.
So that'll disappear.
Yep, we can cut that 2,500.
Right.
Can we look really quickly at page 15 of 25? This is just a comment, and I just want a consensus, if everybody agrees with me. I spoke to the manager regarding Iron Mountain. I know we're talking about digitally moving forward. I'd like us long-term to look at a way to see what we could do to get out of this. My understanding is it's an incredible cost to get out of it. I think $20,000 was thrown around.
That's the number that I've been told that's been kicked around.
Okay.
I'll have to actually check.
I asked him to check with the attorney to see what we could do to address that.
I will ask my wife, they had a contract with Iron Mountain, and which they did get out of. I guess if we ever went there and took a look at the boxes they have, I think we probably could get out of the contract.
Okay, and that's something I think we need to look into long-term, because that's another $3,000 out the door, so. All right, and then just to pull it out of there, the cost of just getting a box to look at something is quite costly, so. Is there anybody else on anything on this so far? Anything else in this department? I think we did talk about maintenance and repair of the Toyota Corolla. One of the things I'm going to talk about generically, if I may, for just one moment, and that is the cost of repairs. One of the things, signing checks, that you learn very quickly, and I know the two people sitting on both sides of me can talk to that, is our cost of maintenance repairs on our vehicles almost outweigh having a new vehicle and paying a lease on it. So while in the same instances you don't want to keep buying new cars, that may be, but at the same time, if it's costing you, $2,000 and $3,000 and $4,000, and again, it breaks down another $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000, by the time you're finished, you're at $8,000 or $9,000, you could have leased a car for $5,000. So I think one of the things we need to look at in our fleet overall, and maybe, if it's okay with you, maybe having some people who have some expertise in that. We have some in the police department, I think, now. Taking a look at what that would be, and then also trying to move us, if we can, on the vehicles that are not heavy equipment, maybe look at some more ecologically friendly things like Priuses and things like that, so that at least we're then be cutting down on gas as well. And those vehicles, if you don't get them, souped up and you get them stripped down, you can probably, pretty much cover that in our costs.
For a code car, for an
Right.
admin car, the Priuses would be great.
Okay.
For a police car, not so much.
No.
Right, right. So that's my thought. I'm looking at the chief, I'm not sure he can fit in a Prius.
Commissioner Ross?
I'm really partial to the Chevy Volt, and there's a Chevy dealership right up the street, so I don't know that we have to do Prius, but something of that nature.
Yeah, there's a Sonata, there's a couple of them.
Yeah.
There's
Some hybrid.
some sort of
We're gonna do
hybrid.
Something a
and-
little more green, so definitely.
Yeah, and something that definitely holds up and is the right price. That would also hold up, and look at some of the consumer reports on maybe what's held up the best. Because I also like the Sonatas, but I don't think they hold up as well as some of the other cars, so. Okay. I think you reinstated the newsletter. That will be very well cheered. I have an only question on the bank. I know on page 20 of 25, I believe, was the line item that Commissioner Ross was saying to go ahead and refund the $2,500 back into that. Okay. The only other thing I had a question on was the payroll processing. Is that expenses that have not to do with the contract, but actual hard stuff?
No, that's the actual contract.
Oh, that is okay.
That is
I
the
wasn't
actual
sure that was there or that,
Yeah,
okay.
no, it's the payroll processing, they submit all of our tax forms, the W-2s at the end of the year.
That's good.
the whole
I just
thing.
didn't know what it was, so I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if it was there. Okay. And then the last one I had a question on was page 21 of 25, and that was the 9,500 proposed for office supplies. I know I spoke to the manager about that, and you said you were going to look into, I know that's what we're trending at, but that just seemed like a rather high amount. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what's in there, so I don't want to misspeak.
And I'll be digging into that too. I mean, it's office supplies. It could be bath
She's
tissue.
looking
It
at-
could be other things. Oh, if she has the detail, that would be great.
Yeah,
And again, it might be all encompassing, for other departments.
right. And
So,
that's what I was wondering.
But yeah, I'd have to look at the actual invoices because I don't have the level of, I know it's Office Max or Office Depot, but I don't know from looking at the general ledger.
Right. And I'm not trying to
who's
nickel and
ordering
dime, it just seemed like a very high number, so.
Right.
If we could just get some detail on that when you have a moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if we've got a Costco card, I imagine some of that stuff we probably would be buying there.
Well, there's another section on the
sorry.
next page. Under operating supplies, there's a general supply of 3,000. So if you add that into the 9,500, you're getting up there. So that's kind of what I was looking at. And also, I think I talked about a laptop. I'm not sure if that was for the village manager or what, or you had talked about maybe removing that item or,
The laptop computer, that was one that we had talked about. I was going to see if I could get a laptop computer here, but I can buy that myself. I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
That doesn't
All
need
right.
to be a village expense.
all right, thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, thinking about that and thinking about the public records aspect of it, I think it's so much cleaner if there's a piece of equipment that belongs to the village and all the information on there is village related, and that way we don't get your family pictures when there's public records requests
And I understand. My thought with buying this would be a second laptop for me. I have my personal one. I would not be using
Right.
this
So-
for the family pictures.
So we just bought a what do they call them, a 2-in-1, which is a tablet laptop, and it
Tablet
was
laptop.
like $650.
Yeah. They're not horribly expensive. That's why I said, I can buy that. That's not a problem. So,
It's, that's,
But then the question is, does it belong to the village or is it yours?
and if I buy it, it's mine.
Right.
Most
So-
of them are consumable. They after 3 years, I know for I bought myself as well. And this is a personal choice. Sometimes, let me just go back for a second. I thought we had purchased a laptop for the village manager previously. Am I wrong on that?
I think we purchased a new laptop, and I
Was
believe
it for
the
code?
clerk is using it. Or no, the code. That's right.
Code.
We did get one for
Code.
code. Did we get a new one for the clerk, Caesar? Do you know? In the last?
That's the new one for the clerk.
Okay.
And the one that Rachel Ross is referring to was the one that we purchased
For code.
Okay, so we never purchased one for a village manager previously?
After that one,
Okay.
that would be a mistake, but I have not seen it.
I'm not aware.
There is another old laptop lurking about. It weighs about 30 pounds.
No, no.
So-
No, once past 3, 4, 5 years, you're done.
So,
So
yeah.
you barely probably can't even get on the internet. So I don't have a problem, maybe just reduce the cost of it if you want to do that.
Or my suggestion, we budgeted 1,200 for the current year. We haven't spent it. Why don't we just buy it now?
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, then just remove it from here. And the last two in this section, I believe, are education and training. If there's any questions on that, did you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think you had some thoughts on that. You had some thoughts on education?
One second. Let me put that
Sure.
there. I was taking some notes, yeah. Yeah, we just wanted to increase the education and training for the manager and the clerk. Marlon would need to be going to more conferences and so forth for her to keep her clerk credentials up and to get more of those. I would like to be doing that as well for myself. So we looked at increasing that. For finance, so that one, that one, we'll take out the
Yeah.
$300 for finance. Good try.
I didn't even notice it, sorry.
That was my error, actually. So it wasn't B slipping one over on us. And so, yeah, and just $1,000 for staff education and training and in general.
I would just like to consider, I'm not trying to nickel and dime here, but maybe we could just get it down to 2 and 1.
I'm good with that, yeah.
Okay. Is that a consensus? Okay with everyone?
Do we
Or
have training in there for our software
down to 2,000.
system that does the finance, that does the
that-
building permits? Isn't there one system that we're using for everything?
There's the
Okay.
BSNA system, yeah.
And is
we-
everybody,
Following.
or
I'm not
is-
sure that there's anyone at the village right now that's actually been through BSNA training. I think all of us have come in and learned from, someone who'd been there before, but not formal training. And I would like to do that
Yeah.
for all village staff, because we can all utilize
I
that
mean,
software.
If you have numbers that, because I think part of the problem here is they're kind of like errant, pie in the sky numbers. If there's a reason for the number and you have something specific, I don't have a problem looking at that. I just have a problem picking a number just to have a number, so.
And I will tell you that, having gone through this recently with the BSNA, at the first week, I think I called them like 3 times. And after that, they just redirected me. They have a web page, and you type in your question. And I mean, it could be the most random thing, and there's an answer and literally step-by-step instructions on how to do it. So it's very informative.
Right.
And, you cut back on any login time or, support calls. So I don't think we got billed unless they actually come out.
Okay.
But, it's pretty user-friendly, and like I said, it's a wealth of information.
And that's a new piece of information for me. I had no idea that website existed.
Yep, yep.
And I've been using BSNA since 2014.
yeah, this would be good, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, maybe if they would come out and give a half-a-day seminar or something to everybody, so everybody knew what it was and what to do, and
I think the report features may also be helpful, but then you probably, see, you do this all the time, so I think going from one software to the other for you is a no-brainer. It just may not be for everybody.
and is that what we use for code, too?
It is,
It's all integrated,
Okay,
which is
that would be great,
Yep.
yeah.
And
Okay.
I just wanted to go back one page, because I think we're kind of overlapping and talking about those things, because I'm hearing about software, and I want to know whether or not that's coming into the line item of the finance software licensing.
It's BSNA.
And I also have a question about the daily business review, which proposed, I mean, it seems like a nickel and diming of $400, but is that actually getting like the paper, journals, and subscription?
No, that's where we put our advertising.
That's where we do our advertising
Okay.
for our public events and so forth. So-
It's for the RFPs, it's also for when there's an ordinance, all those have to be advertised there.
Okay.
And they're the cheapest, I imagine?
I know that for a fact that they're a lot cheaper than the Miami Herald,
Yes.
which we do have to advertise in for the budget hearings.
Right.
So.
Any other questions? Comments?
Oh, I wanted to just point out page 25 of 25. We budgeted a $50,000 contingency. And that was there was $64,000 budgeted for the current year. We've spent a little bit of it, and I can go into detail. I know we looked at what that was, but the $50,000, that's my recommendation to the manager for hurricanes, when they are coming and we have to prepare for them, or we have to, God forbid, pay anything out, any overtime, which we will recoup from FEMA based on whatever percentage they're giving out this year. It used to be 100%, now it's down to, it was down to 75, and I think now it's down to 50%. But these are upfront costs that we have to shell out. So we put this $50,000 contingency in here, not to be used for at whim, but, we would definitely come to council and ask your authorization to touch that 50,000. But it is a placeholder, and eliminating this would obviously increase that $164,000 surplus that we have on the front page that's going to your reserves or capital projects or anything like that. So just keep in mind that there's 50,000 in here set aside.
And you did, I think, also $10,000 in Public Works as well for that.
For
right?
storm prep.
For storm prep, correct?
Right.
So that gives us a total of 60 for those types
Yes,
of things.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm fine with that number.
Hey, do we have the website in here? A new website?
Development, I didn't see it in here.
There was something for website, I remember seeing something in there, I believe.
That is something that I would like to budget for, is to have the website completely redone, because that one's so antiquated at this point. We need to bring it into the 21st century.
And you estimated that to be 7,000, you said?
We got an estimate from the company that we're currently using, and they said they could do it for between 5 and 7, I believe. Is that correct, Marlon? So, it depends on how many bells and buttons, lights and whistles. I don't think we, need 7,000 necessarily. We can certainly talk with
I'm
them.
not sure if I'd like to see somebody else look at it also, because looking at the website now, I know there are things that are that are there,
Right.
and I can't find them.
Mhm.
I mean, you can find it by hitting the buttons, it's there.
Well, that's the setup we've selected, and that's
It's the
that's
template.
how it is currently and how it has been. So if we do the $5,000 option, we'll be starting from scratch. It will be completely different. It'll be much more user-friendly and hopefully much clearer as well.
Okay.
The one,
Entirely different
yeah,
technology.
one of the things you and I have spoken about, and so I'll bring it up in front of the commission, is I want it to be more, we are a part-time, commission, in the sense that we all work, many of us work. We don't have the wherewithal that many commissioners do with staff and so forth to be able to reach out and get, up-to-date mailing lists all the time and so forth. And I know for some of us who have been here much longer, you have your list, you know which ones are there or not, you keep up. It would be easier to have us have access to email blasts and things like that as us to communicate with our constituents. So as part of that website development, I want to make it more user-friendly for the commissioners as well as staff to be able to reach out to people, so that we're not doing I get, 50, I've been asking since I ran for office to get an updated list that actually functions. So, and it doesn't. So I'd like to make it easier, and then I'd like it also to have the graphics so that it's not, I don't have to turn to Marla and say, hey, you've got nothing else to do in your day, and I want to send you some information, could you send out an e-blast? So I'd like to see that happen with some sort of communication, and I think,
And I'm not sure that's a component of our website necessarily. It may be a component, maybe setting up constant contact accounts for the commission. I'll have to look in that and see. I don't think we talked about that through our website when we were talking with the gentleman getting the estimate. So we could check that out.
I'd like to see it only because this way we don't get the emails, I've moved out of the village, I'm not here anymore. This way it's at least, we may choose to have our own
That's
list.
just feeding a database.
Yeah.
And that, we should be doing it. I don't know how you're getting the bounce, because okay, let me start at the beginning.
We don't have to, go ahead.
My presumption is that the list you're sending to is a copy of the village's database.
That is what I was given by the clerk, yes.
Okay.
Not this clerk, former clerk.
So that needs to be scrubbed. I'm not sure, if you're getting bounce backs when you send those out, we would be getting them as well. I'm not sure where they go. They may be going into a spam folder or something.
My understanding, this is what's happening. My understanding is because of the list, the way it's done, is when I cut and paste it from what was given to me, because I did it with Maria, and
Right.
she was in contact with the gentleman doing it, is that apparently it doesn't it has separate entities, ones that they can, if they withdraw, they don't come back to you. But on the list that she's copying and giving to me, those show up. So if you can find a solution that isn't complicated, I'm happy that we can talk about this offline. We don't have to do it here tonight.
We'll do that another
But
time,
yeah, Commissioner Ross.
Yeah, it's a discussion for an in-depth discussion at a later time. I've worked with wonderful commissioners, and I've worked with commissioners that really, really put everyone on edge. And we have 5 reasonable people here right now, but we don't know who will be elected 2 years from now. And I would hesitate having the ability to email blast from the village, in that fashion, gaining that access. Pulling the list and putting it into their constant contact account or something else like that, I'm fine with. But just because I've seen it happen in very bad ways, I'd hesitate having that open access.
We'll definitely continue this conversation.
Before we move on to another department, if we're talking about the contingency, and we just talked a little bit about what was in the current year contingency, there's some other stuff in there that maybe we could get accomplished before the end of the year, since the money was set aside for it. And in particular, I'm thinking about the shade structure at the park, if you want to wait until we have the park and rec item discussed. But it sort of straddles both things.
I'd like to just wait and put that into the same part, so we're all apples to apples and orange to oranges, if we may.
Okay.
The debt,
Is that it for administration?
I think so. Debt service, I think
It's pretty self-explanatory.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory, and I also think you're in the current negotiation to see if you can improve that situation. So I think if everybody's okay with that, we'll skip that today unless there's something specifically in that. Okay. It is going on 10 to 9, and I know the chief has waited. Do you want to go through the police department and then call it an evening for this evening? Sounds fair. Does that work for
What was
everybody? Go through the police department and then call it an evening, or do you want to stop? How do you want to, how does everybody want to proceed?
I'm fine with it.
Fine? Okay, we'll go ahead and continue with the police? All right. This is just a reminder, we can discuss anything that is non-PBA related.
Do we have a buzzer if we talk about something that's in a...
I'm going to hope the city manager will jump in and
That pretty much leaves printing and binding.
no, I think there was a couple
Do you
other
mean
things.
handcuffs?
Chief, come on up, take me away. If
Not that kind of
anybody talks,
binding?
you're in. I think there was one question I had that I'm going to ask you to look into.
Okay.
That is on page 5 of 20. And correct me if I'm wrong, and please tell me if I'm wrong. I believe we can touch this page comfortably? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
I think so.
So if we're on 5 of 20, the comp time, I believe that, I'm not sure that should be in there, so that's, I think that should be removed.
Yep.
Okay,
I
so
agree.
comp time is a mistake, that gets crossed. Thank you. The second one we cannot discuss, because that's already part of the bargaining unit. The court time is not, however, and my recommendation is based upon the outstanding job that the police department is doing, because I saw the stack of tickets for 2 weeks, about that thick. I think we're going to probably need to increase your court time. So my recommendation is to double that. Now, if the chief, you have a thought on that with real numbers, I would appreciate it.
I mean, as of right now, as it go by,
I'm going to make you get up. Got to talk to the mic that you
Okay.
doesn't reach you.
In 2017, we adopted 12,000 for that. So, just to start off with that.
I mean, as it go by, that's definitely going to be something that we need to take a look into, is how we're producing, what that is going to cost. But as of right now, I would say that it would be safe to raise that a little bit.
Okay, what number would you think would be appropriate?
I mean, you said double it, I think that would be a conservative estimate.
Okay. Are there any objections, and do we have a consensus for that?
Yeah,
Yes?
Great, yeah.
Okay.
I have a question about that comp time. Because we do have, year-to-date, $7,200 in there.
Can we discuss?
I'll have to look and see what specifically it is.
Chief, can you shine any light on that?
I mean, as far as the way that I interpret it, our comp time was something that was built in, like a flex time. It was used to help curb overtime, so that basically it was, you worked to earn your vacation. In that though, we never had the ability to sell comp time back, so I don't know how a dollar amount is attached to it.
What the old budget said is payout of comp time accrued.
But nope, it wasn't.
Well, I guess we just have to find out what that year-to-date is.
If you could look into that, and then if it's not a budgetable item, remove it? Okay. All right.
I'm not sure what page it's on. We had talked about
I
some...
found it, by the
Okay.
way. It's actually miscoded. It wasn't comp time, it was off-duty pay. I don't know if you're familiar with off-duty, but basically, we pay it out and we're reimbursed, or the way it's supposed to happen is we get paid by the city that used our officers. We pay our officers directly. So it's a wash. So that's what it is. So that means it was coded to comp time. It shouldn't have been. I'll reallocate it, but, so it should be a wash with off-duty revenue
So,
stream.
but we have to show the expense, and then we'd show the revenue on the other side.
Correct,
Yes,
correct.
yeah. Thank you.
My question was, I think we had certain things that we said were unfunded liabilities, as far as was it sick time, or was it over?
Yes, it's sick and vacation time.
And we don't fund it, or we funded it a certain amount, or we,
Typically, and I'll have to see what percentage is in your audit report, in your CAFR, the last one that we have, but typically, we run the calculation of balances earned time at the end of the year, and it's broken out into the specific categories. Sick
Right.
time, sometimes there's stipulations on sick time, it's a certain percentage based on how long you've been here, or
Right.
that kind of thing. And we calculate it at the employee's rate, we get a total, and what you do is you pick a percentage. So say you want to put away 25% of that unfunded liability, because the odds of your entire staff leaving at the same time are unrealistic. But you do have people who leave throughout years, whether it's retirement or, to go on somewhere else. So you have a pool or a reservation or designation within your fund balance for that 20 or 25% of your compensated absences.
so do we actually, so we only fund 25% of it?
Yes, you never fund it 100%.
And the reason for that is,
Because usually, say it's a retirement, someone will announce, oh, I'm going to retire at the end of fiscal year 18.
Right.
Well, you look at their time balance, and maybe you allocate that part. But because it's unpredictable and you don't know, it's really not feasible to encumber or commit the full amount. You could have somebody who's going to be here 20 years, 30 years, or they use it. Keep in mind that sometimes people don't take a vacation for a year, but then the next year they might take a 2-week cruise, or, so they do kind of eat into it. So you don't ever fully fund it.
I guess my thought is, I would say, why would it be fully funded, and on a year-to-year basis, you see, okay, well, we've used this much, so this year we don't have to fund as much because we have this much left over from the previous year. So worst-case scenario, it no longer becomes an unfunded liability. It is a funded liability.
Right. And sometimes what some municipalities do is that they have a cap on how many hours of a certain earned time that they can maintain, and it's either it gets paid out, so that it's paid out at the rate that it was earned, because that's the other thing, is that,
Right.
if you've got a 20-year employee and they earn sick time at $19 an hour, you fast forward to now, and it's at a completely different rate, so, you cap it and then you pay it out depending on your personnel policy.
But when they leave,
whatever
you
it
still
is.
only funded 25% of that. Is
When
that
they
correct?
Just to be careful, you are starting to border on as far as PBA negotiations.
Oh, and I meant just municipalities in general, not anyone
Municipalities,
specific.
I'm not saying what you guys do, I'm saying is, I want to make sure, it just seems
but if-
to us.
Okay, so let's,
So,
since
yeah,
we're
I was
in the
thinking
police
kind of
now,
general.
just to be clear for everybody who's watching, we're in the police now, so let's postpone this to another section where we can talk about it.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. Page 13 of 20, if I may. Just to be clear, I know we had some changes and this wasn't quite right. Have we updated this, or will you make sure that we can update this for everybody who's reading it?
I mean,
And
you-
everybody who cannot see anything about what we're doing and you feel blind, let me be clear. Let me just be clear. We're on the rentals and leases under the police department. We're looking at copiers and the cost of vehicle leases. And my concern was some of where things were placed.
Right. Some of those leases were not showing up in here, and I had the fleet calculated again today and given to me. I emailed it to all the commissions this afternoon.
Oh, I didn't see it.
If you had a chance to
No, I
see
didn't
or
see it.
not.
Okay.
But we have one copy down here. I believe Commissioner Ross has another copy. And so if we can,
So the ones that have the hash marks, when you gave this to me, those are the ones that are still leased vehicles. We have lease payments on them. I count 12 hash marks, but we don't know the amount of the monthly payments.
we can get that. and prepare that.
If you
and
could,
get you-
if we
get
could
you
definitely
that.
update this for us, so that, because that's going to be a very different number, I think, than what we're seeing here.
Absolutely.
And Chief, could you, I think you have an overview of the fleet, could you discuss that briefly with us?
Yeah, I have the same printout that the manager provided. Just something to keep in mind is going to be, with the way that the contract is written, so I'm trying to go around it. At least 2 of these cars that are listed as pool cars are going to be unavailable. Can't give you an exact time frame on that because one issue we're trying to resolve, and the other one is just a simple training issue. A person needs to be released from training before the car can be assigned. And with constantly trying to grow the reserves comes the added thing that they are going to need equipment. So if pool cars are available, that's great, but depending on where we want to shoot for, if it's going to be 20 reserves, then you may need to start thinking about other avenues of cars. And with that, I know the commission was very, very gracious enough to sign off on getting the SUV that was budgeted for. If we don't want to do another new vehicle, there's going to be, the alternative is finding a place with a fleet maintenance program and purchasing cars from them directly. Now, what has been an issue in the past is if we buy those vehicles, they weren't being looked at and they weren't being properly maintained. Certain cities take care of their cars better. I'm not going to say which ones, but we are aware of it, and those are the only places that we would get vehicles from now. So it is another alternative. It's really going to be up to you guys.
In your estimate, based upon the number of cars we currently have, 17 is our vehicles, including 3 of which are not marked, 4 of which or 3 of which are not marked cars, I believe, 4? 4, correct?
I believe,
Including yours, I was putting yours in there.
yes.
Okay, so 4 are unmarked. That leaves you, if I'm doing my math, 13 cars, and 10 of which are currently, or 9 or 10 of which right now are currently on our take-home cars, correct? Or 8? 9. Okay, so that leaves you just a handful of vehicles for all your reservists or if things break down, correct? Okay, so I noticed you were incredibly conservative in your budget as we go through it. You didn't ask for a single piece of equipment. You really didn't ask for much, and I know you were talking about using the police forfeiture fund to buy some of these things. In your estimate, and I want to be clear that if you need a vehicle, let us know. If it's going to be less expensive, we can get a used vehicle, or one that's maintained that won't cost us, that's less than it would cost us to get a new one. That would make sense. On the other hand, if it's going to cost us more, once again, it doesn't. So I just, as you're working through the budget with the manager, just think about where the police force you anticipate it being within the next year. Not 10 years from now, but within the next year, and realistically what you might need to make sure that we have our officers, if you need a show of force, have the vehicles to do it in. That's my concern, because I noticed when I looked through this budget, I didn't see anything. Very little in here. I think you even told me printing and binding you wanted to cut down because you said you didn't need that. But can you go over for us on 46 where it says equipment, radios, and vehicles? I think I got an education on radios that I didn't understand today from both Commissioner Anderson, former Commissioner Anderson, and also the chief on the actual cost of these things. I was pretty shocked. So these are radios that keep the officers safe, correct? That are
Yeah, ultimately, the radio is our lifeline to communications.
right. So you asked for basically, what is this, 2 or 3 of them?
Essentially.
Okay. And then for the repair and maintenance, we were about 22,000. It was your estimate. And then for equipment, could you expand a little bit on that for us?
On equipment for 46 for radios and vehicles, or?
No, you have equipment under 46, and I'm not sure, it's up to 20,000.
Under repairs and maintenance.
Under repairs and maintenance.
I can probably shed some light on what we've spent. I think it was based on how we were trending.
Okay,
So let me take a look at that.
thank you. And if I'm not mistaken, Chief, you also said that the vehicles that currently are not under warranty were how many of them? So that actually wasn't too bad considering what we used to pay. I think how many of them were not under warranty? And I know this still includes some warranty stuff like oil changes and things like that, but I think there was only a handful that were not now.
I believe five.
Five, okay.
Four or five.
The Crown Victorias.
As long as we're talking about the vehicles also, if we look at the big picture in that first summary page, it looks like the budget has been reduced by $48,000, and I know a lot of that had to do with personnel changes and stuff. So back to the page about the vehicles, when I saw that huge reduction in the leases, I thought, wow, we're going to save a lot of money on cars, but then I realized that we were missing some. And if we were, that page shows 6 cars at $40,000. If we were to say double those amount of lease payments for
We're
the
back
12
over there.
leases, then we're still going to be either a little bit less than last year or back where we were last year. So just big picture, on the whole, I think that the police budget is fine the way it is.
And Chief, are you familiar with Rainbow Emergency Equipment?
Yes, Rainbow Emergency is the one who installs our lights for us.
That's what's the 15,000 year-to-date on equipment for repairs and maintenance. It's all Rainbow Emergency Equipment.
We've been fortunate enough through previous years in the LEL program, Click It or Ticket, Law Enforcement Challenge, DUI campaigns, to be able to purchase equipment. There were some years when we had $45,000 to be able to purchase lights. Unfortunately, when the last group of vehicles were ordered, 3 or 4 of them, they were ordered with the minimum amount of lighting. After we took a look at it and the liability issues of having a single light bar versus making every effort to have the vehicle seen, we already had the lights. It was a lot easier to pay the $1,000, $800 to have something installed to save on the liability of it.
If this expense is not needed, would you consider, if you don't think it's going to be needed for the upcoming piece, could we consider putting a vehicle in that instead? Leasing a vehicle? I don't know. I'm a little concerned you're going to be short of cars as you're trying to increase the force. That's my concern.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but with it as it is right now, I'm still trying to outfit some of the ones that were improperly ordered.
Okay,
So
all right.
to say, yeah, let's go ahead and move it over at this point,
Now, do whatever you think. I was a little concerned with moving up in the force, and we had so few cars left. You have basically 3 for 9 officers, correct? Am I doing that correct? Math correct?
more or less, yeah.
Okay, and that was my concern, so if we have to deal with it later, we can deal with it later.
Keep in mind on the leases that we currently have, one is on 2013 Ford Taurus, so that lease will end next year.
Okay.
Okay. Then we have one 2014, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 2015s. So over the next 3 years, we'll have several leases paid for.
Yeah, so those earlier leases are going to be a less dollar amount monthly, and we're not going to reach the 80,000 by doubling them. I would like you to consider purchasing some of those speed lights, like the ones we've rolled around, or maybe stationary ones,
The speed trailers.
speed trailers, or stationary, same function type of things that seem to be very helpful in reminding people the speed that they're going and slowing traffic down. If there's room in the budget, rather than shrink it by the difference, I would keep it the same as last year and take advantage of that savings and get that enhancement.
In my opinion, I would definitely say if you have the option to go with the one that can be moved, because we have the 2 that are out on Northeast 6th Avenue, which is great for Northeast 6th Avenue, but only 6th Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
The trailers we're able to move wherever. I was just talking to Commissioner Bill earlier. I was able to get a trailer loaned to us. The manager was able to reach out to some of his contacts. I was able to reach out to some of mine. and we were able to borrow a $7,000 speed trailer, which has the capability to record data. So we're going to put that out. That should be able to help us out because now we're able to collect studies without having to assign man hours to it. I'm not saying that that needs to be a route that we need to go, but that's what you're looking at, base model for something that's able to record 7,000.
It's a good investment, I think.
Good.
Does that have to be bought outright, or can we do that over,
I'm sorry?
can we lease that over 2 years, or can we buy it out, have to buy that outright, or could we spread that over 2
We're
years?
testing it out right now. We have
See if
a
it works.
loaner right now.
All
Let's see how the
right.
demo goes with that, and what information we can collect, and so forth. And then we'll look at
And
how the...
obviously, the ones that do not record, like you've seen that we have one in the past, those will be a little bit less, but not by half. So.
Any other questions on this budget?
No, but could I suggest, as long as our recreation manager has sat through, can we maybe just rush through his department?
Absolutely. I have zero problem with that.
We're all done with the chief?
Right.
One comment I want to make, just real quick. Thank you so much, Chief. Yep. We're all done? Yes?
Go home. Thank you for everything.
Thank you so much. Just one comment. I didn't see the building official in the building department, so could you look into that? I just didn't want to break tonight without saying that.
He's under professional services.
Ah, okay. Thank you for that, because I looked and could not find it. I was like, where'd that go? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump to Parks and Rec, which is number 10 in the book. Thank you. Can't see, thank you. You're up. Not only you're here, but you're in budget season. You want to go ahead?
We'll jump into this.
Yep.
And so, essentially, Lisa's been back 10 minutes, and so, grilling. No, please, take a look, let us know if there's any questions that you have. This budget.
No pressure, he said.
I'm sorry?
I said no pressure, he said. Know the budget immediately, yeah.
Which is
Just real quick, just the support behind page 8 of 18, the contractual services. I know 2017 it was 1,500, we have 6,500.
That is for the yoga, dance, and boot camp instructors, which they collect the fees and then give us a percentage of that. So I guess there's been an increase in programs that are going to be offered, so we're estimating that it'll be $6,500. Is that the way it works?
And the description on the top of that says custodial, janitorial, all of that, that's incorrect.
Yeah.
So what
Which
this
page are we on?
is,
Just page, please.
8.
Thank you.
what this is like our Pilates class.
Yes, this is the payout to the instructor.
Right. We collect the money, we get X percentage, and this would be the payout.
So this is the
to
net.
them for the other.
net.
It's offset by something on the revenue side.
Is it put in
I think-
revenue, or is it?
No, because the way that they collect, wait, how does it work?
I think
We're collecting the
it's-
fee.
Are we collecting the fee and paying them, or are they collecting the fee and paying us?
And while you're doing that, there was an issue with the aftercare. For that reason, my understanding is we weren't getting the money, they were collecting it. So I would like to see whatever process we have in place is consistent across the board. The fees are collected, but I'd also like to see some sort of summary sheet showing offsets, so we
Right.
know, rather than, if that's possible.
I
with
know
this.
that the aftercare is a revenue on the revenue page. This one, I think we do it backwards. I think we collect and then we pay out the vendor.
My understanding from the
I know,
previous,
I'm sorry, I take the yoga classes and I give the yoga instructor a check, so they collect it and
Yeah,
they
that's my
pay us.
understanding.
And my understanding too is that that is the way it is happening right now. I also understand that we haven't paid Drishti apparently in 6 or 8 months, which is why it became that way. But we're digging into that.
I think we need, and this is what I'm going to say, I think we need to be the collection piece through the Parks Department. I think it needs to be collected. And then this way we're sure to get the money, and then we're consistently paying that person. And I also think that any other types of things we're using, which we'll get to in Parks and Rec, such as the van, I think we need to look at that seriously, whether or not we're going to give out equipment and do that to folks. I think that's not always wise.
I agree. I think it should be set up similarly to the permit fees. We collect the revenue, and then there's a percentage that's paid out
Is
based
that,
on...
and I just want to be clear, because you work for other
I-
cities, is this the norm?
Usually, the entity collects the revenue and then pays out based on services rendered, you know, and the agreement that you have, whatever the percentage split might be, which is why I was surprised when, you know, I heard about the yoga instructor and she hadn't been paid, and I was like, who collects the money? Where is it? So I was a little unclear on this, but now that Issa's here, maybe we can straighten it all
So
out.
theoretically, this should be a wash.
No, it should be a net.
No, it should be a net for us.
Right. Because we
Take a
charge a
percent.
certain fee and they only get a percentage.
Yeah, because this is shown as an expense.
This is an expense, that's what I'm saying, this is an expense.
Right.
Where is it showing as?
Whereas
Revenue.
With the-
revenue
yeah.
side that offsets this expense.
Right, I agree, it's very confusing.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see somewhere in here, to say,
So-
oh yeah, this is, we're paying out $6,500, but we're probably collecting.
We can't project that,
No,
so
Okay,
that's the issue.
well,
might
we would have, but I don't have a revenue source.
might I suggest that since we're moving into budget season, this has become an obvious consensus, or let me back up. Is there a consensus that we want to collect the revenue and disperse it like other municipalities do?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. 1,
Yeah.
2, 3,
Yes.
4?
I'm not sure.
Does,
Okay, so we have 4 and maybe.
And the reason I'm not sure is because there was a time when our auditors had a problem with our collecting fees and monies at the rec center, and, you know, it sort of took a time to be routed to the finance department.
Okay, but I think
that's a
we have,
procedure problem.
I think we have somebody new.
I'm just saying, that to me is a process. Like, if the process needs to be changed, where the
Right.
payment's not being taken at the rec center, I don't know whether
Maybe
it's,
they come in the
it's
office.
online, whether they come to Village Hall, that's a process issue.
And that's something
Right.
that we'll handle administratively,
Yeah.
and so.
Do you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I mean, that's something I can work with Issa on, you know, getting that process in place. My understanding was that was in place when Shalisha was here. When she left, everything sort of fell apart on that. But we can get that in place, I believe. Am I speaking out of school here? Because I'm volunteering you.
So, I mean, it's fine. Like, facility rentals pay at Village Hall.
Right.
So we don't deal with that cash. And like Commissioner Ross was saying, in years past, they had requested that we stop the traffic of money coming through the rec center at that time. And contractors would go through, some were collecting funds, like Tristan, the yoga instructor, has been there the longest of any of our contractors, probably. I know Golden Gates submits directly to Village Hall with their description attached to, I guess, the time period. Again, I work with the manager to set up a policy. We can transfer everything to Village Hall. I want to put that on them as well, but extra work. The 2 new contracts, they haven't started yet, so it's a perfect time to put something in place. And so if that's changing how the yoga instructor does it to get everybody unified, that's fine with me. Or if we want to.
I think if we
find
could
different
collect
ways.
credit cards there, that would be the prime way of doing it. Swipe the credit card, it goes into our account, they print it, credit card thing prints out a receipt, and nobody carries, I shouldn't say nobody, most people don't carry checks, and people always, instead of even taking cash, oh no, we'll take a credit card.
And merchant services is something that we ask for in our request for proposals for, or for bids on the banking services.
Right.
And also, I went back and I looked at the revenue. So on page 12 of the revenue section, we do have $10,000 budgeted for recreational program fees.
Okay.
So I believe the 6,500 is the offset.
So we're actually making
So-
3,500,
so
right?
we're-
Okay, that's, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I believe that's the split, if I'm...
70-30.
There you go, so it's
Okay.
close,
Yeah.
but not
Okay.
so I think there is an offsetting revenue there, so I didn't remember it. but-
Yeah, instead of making people come into Village Hall to pay, let them pay their credit cards, easiest way, or check, either one of the two,
That'd be great.
I would think.
That'd be great.
But,
Does everybody agree that, well, is there consensus? Yes. Thank you. Is there consensus that
Yes.
these should be moved towards merchant services?
Yeah, something like
Anyway,
that.
okay. Yes.
Okay, that's,
Okay. Page 3 of 18, just real quick, my only suggestion there is rather than names specifically, they're just, you just split the salary difference and create that like an 18-18 split. And just to be consistent, and then your seasonal 3,000.
Is that
wait, so we're
maybe-
going to give them less than
Is that
their?
maybe, I'm sorry, is that maybe because one employee works the weekend and basically that's what the hours that she puts in?
Yes, but what I was saying was regardless of which, if you do 2 part-time and jump in here, then that leaves like it doesn't necessarily budget one person or another, it just allows you to have a more even split.
Right.
Would that be comfortable for you?
Yeah, that's
Okay. I have only one a question in general over the copiers, and that is, I think we might want to also look at that contract to see why we're paying per page and look at a different arrangement. That just seems like a cost outlay that I think we might be able to benefit from if we had a different kind of contract.
Yeah, we'll look at that. I mean, currently what we're doing, the way my understanding of the contract reads is we get X amount per month of pages after if we exceed that. For instance, when I sent my letter out last month, we exceeded it, so then we get charged by the page beyond that. So
And that can get costly, yes.
it can if we're doing a lot of bulk mailings. The reality is we don't do a lot of those. We do probably 3 or 4 of those a year. But,
I mean, if it's not as costly and that makes sense, then you can outsource it to Kinko's to do that particular, I mean, I don't know, so.
but we'll look at
The
the
good thing is they're not charging us a rental fee for any of the machines. It's strictly usage.
Oh, okay.
So.
So it actually
that's
is
kinda
cost effective?
nice,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and I think they have a different price for black and white versus color, which is nice because when you're sitting at the computer, you select, so it automatically defaults to black and white, which is the cheaper. So,
If that's more cost effective, then, okay.
yeah.
All right. I have a question. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Ross, I'm sorry.
Now that we're in the Recreation Department, and the department is well underspent for what was budgeted this year, I wonder if we could go ahead and improve that shade structure. We had set aside some money for it, and then we put that money in contingency when we were in doubt what our financial condition was going to be.
Is this the tear?
Yeah.
I'd like to see that repaired, and I thought the estimate on that was very high. I thought it can be repaired at a much less expensive rate. I just think that could be looked into. I don't have a problem fixing it, I think you should, but I think it'd be the rate.
I don't, Caesar, do you by chance remember what the estimate on that was? I have not seen that. I don't believe so. So.
We just
We'll have to check
the other
it.
day, so
Yeah.
we're gonna look to get quotes.
Yeah, my concern was that the way it was originally budgeted, the company that had the design flaw had a pretty high price on the ticket, and I've looked at it, I've looked at repair places that do stuff for boats and stuff, and you can get it done for significantly less. My suggestion is, I have no problem repairing it, but I'd like to see it repaired at a reasonable rate.
I'd like to see the numbers on both, to repair, to replace it, little pro-con memo on both
I think
choices.
repair is going to be considerably less expensive because my recollection was that shade structure was, what, about $50,000 when it was installed? And I think a repair can probably be done for, guesstimating, what, 7 or 8 if max. My understanding too is the tear that we currently have is from a tree limb going through it. It's not a design.
Well, there was some issue, I recall, with the way I don't know. I'll hold off on that, but my understanding was there was an issue with the way it was designed and ripped. But either way, it's a rip about this big, and I think $7,000 to repair that is just astronomical. I think that it can be looked at. You can call boat repair places and people, and they can do things for, they do this kind of work all the time on sails and on boats and on things like this. I just don't think, if it doesn't look perfect, okay. At least it's giving shade. That's the intent of what it's supposed to do. I found that the expenditure that we were going to expend was, to me, way
It's
too high.
also not deteriorating as rapidly if you take care of it.
Right. No, I'm agreeing with that. I just think we need to, because there's a way you can seal it from the top and the bottom and create the same.
I was just going to recommend that Caesar get a needle and thread and climb up there.
I'll hold the ladder.
How good are you?
Those iron-on patches, maybe, I don't know, it's,
What is it? Yeah, wax on, wax on.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no problem as long as it's done in that repair, but you want to get numbers? You said you wanted numbers. What do you want? Harvey, what do you want? I'm sorry,
didn't say.
Commissioner Bill.
Sorry, I mean, I want numbers on the repair and just making sure that whatever the repair is doesn't create a further issue. Because, like, I have no idea if it's a tear caused by something falling or, like you're saying, something, a design flaw. Just want to make sure that whoever we're getting in also repairs it properly, that we don't, 2 years from now, it's
Do
a
it
bigger
again.
tear and we have to do it again.
is it a canvas or a umbrella, or?
It's a shade cloth. It's a shade cloth material.
It's a shade
It's a
cloth
shade cloth. It's a heavy-duty shade cloth material where air and things can get through.
Okay, that's,
I also just had one question on because it's such an increase, and I know that we have a contract with regard to our field maintenance, but this $30,000 proposed.
where's,
Just for the audience's
Sorry,
sake.
it's 13 of 18.
13 of 18, we're under repairs and maintenance. We're looking at athletic field resodding of, year-to-date was 4160. There's a proposed of $30,000. There's an equipment of 3,000, vehicles of 5,000, and a building of 5,000 as well.
Okay. To be clear on this, the field, as it currently stands, it really isn't, there isn't much of the old sod, the Bermuda grass, that we pay so much for. There isn't that much of it left at this point. And so what we need to really look at is resodding the field. Before we can seriously look at that, we need to look at what use we want the field to be. Do we want it to be an athletic field, in which case the Bermuda grass is great. It doesn't put out runners, it's not a trip risk. It is higher maintenance and higher expense. If we don't want to use it as an athletic field, we want to use it as an event space. You know, if it's a matter of, throwing down a blanket and watching a movie out there on the field, then, I mean, we can go with other less expensive grasses that are not going to cost us $20,000 a year to maintain. Nor would they cost us $30,000 to sod. We could seed it.
didn't we in fact just pay to have that, he sprayed it, and what did he do? He killed the weeds or something?
I know we just entered
He
into
sprayed
a
it with,
contract.
he sprayed it with herbicides, he sprayed it with insecticides.
Okay.
For mold crickets and that sort of thing.
And then whatever left is what's there now.
What's there primarily now is not the Bermuda grass that, there are patches of the Bermuda.
Right.
But realistically, that field is not Bermuda anymore.
Didn't we
That's not
used
the
to,
majority.
we used seed at one time, I believe. And I think for most of the, I don't know what else, I don't know what uses it's actually being used for. If we use it for things like Halloween night, we use it for the food and tunes, we could probably get by with grass seed, and that's what we used to do in the past.
I have an issue with us trying to make ourselves into a fancy ball field that we're not using.
Yeah.
And the expense of it, when the contractor came up in front of us, I asked the question over and over again, if you're going to spray the field and the stuff dies and you're ended with dirt patches, do we have any money for sod? And the answer is, well, I'll work with you, it's fine, we could. At the end of the day, we end up spending a very large contract. It was $18,000 if I recall.
Yeah, I don't think we've spent it all, though.
Right, but to have something a contract for something that we don't have in the field. The gentleman who came out should have be able to identify the species of grass that was there and the treatments that were there when they put together a contract, and now to come back and say, I'm terribly sorry, you have to resod the whole field, is rather bothersome to me, because that's not the assurances we got when we were in the dales. So I'm quite disturbed by that.
Is that where we got the $30,000 from, the fee?
The field for the...
Field resodding.
That's an estimate.
Was that from the gentleman who did the,
No, that was not from him. That was
Okay.
from him.
I'm in agreement with what the village manager has stated earlier. Now that we have a Parks and Rec director here now.
Right.
Welcome aboard.
We're buying a
Yeah.
lawnmower.
He's starting
Yeah.
to rethink his decision there, but I think we have to decide what we want the park to be. We have to decide, what we want that field to be, because right now, if we just, it's almost like we keep throwing money and throwing money and throwing money. And I wrote down a little note here underneath the circle that said money pit. It just seems like, we can keep doing that, or we can actually try to figure out what do we want it to be, and then we can start budgeting for that, and then, that may
What
be an
was it
issue.
before, and did we get use out of it or not?
I mean, it's always been an athletic / special event field. The Bermuda grass is just a high maintenance grass. It's beautiful. It's very nice. Heavy traffic, it won't do well under, especially if you are not budgeted to maintain it like you need to. And it's just high maintenance grass. So for many years, we weren't maintaining it correctly. And so every couple of years, we would get to this argument where, okay, so let's try to bring it back. And you bring it back, but if you're not budgeting for long-term, constant maintenance of that grass, you're going to end up at where we are now.
Can we use something else besides Bermuda that we could use as an athletic field?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That would be
Bermuda
less
grass is
expensive.
more of a golf, turf kind of grass. It's not built for heavy traffic of sports, and even things where we bring in bounce houses and things like that, where you're driving grass on it, you're gonna, the grass is gonna hurt from that, and then it takes time to recover, and then you have to spend the money to maintain consistently.
So I think at this point, it's kind of like a little bit of a cart before the horse, because it sounds like if the field stays the same way that it is, we're facing a resodding problem because of the type of grass that's there. It doesn't seem like it was the right grass for an athletic field unless you budget
Right.
for the maintenance. So again, now agreeing with Commissioner Tudor, now that you're here, and I think that we need to decide what we're doing so that, I'm looking at this 30,000 and I'm saying, okay, we've also talked about our priorities and things that we might want to see and residents want to see in the park, and I'm afraid that, if this gets pigeonholed for athletic fields resodding and it's not really the direction that we're going in, this money could be allocated to other items. We've talked about a lot of different things here, Vitacourse or other things that the money could be reallocated to. So.
And you might be able to use that dirt patch for that.
Right.
So you never know. That dirt patch may come in handy.
But then again, it's totally correct. We need to establish what we want there. Either way, you're basically looking at resodding.
Of some kind.
Right.
Of some kind. So if you're going to resod the Bermuda grass, we just know that we have to budget to maintain it. If we're going to resod with something else that doesn't take as much to maintain, you won't have to budget as much in the future. But no matter what, where the field is right now, we're going to need to resod if you want one type of grass on the field and the weeds out. Burn those weeds out, you're going to have to basically burn the field out, and so it's going to be starting from scratch.
That's, I thought, what we had, the contract was. He was going to do it twice. He was going to spray twice and get rid of all the weeds.
Then he'd have
If
to
I
get
could
rid of the whole
interject,
field.
what's happened,
And then he'd have to get rid of the whole field.
Right, whatever it was. He said he was going to spray twice, I thought.
I'm just going to be quick because I know Commissioner Ross has been patient. I think maybe there's a couple of things I'd like to look at in reallocating this money. I'd like to see it move more towards the interior of the, I'd like to put some money, instead of 5,000, I'd like to see 15,000 in the building, so we could start doing things like possibly redoing some of the interior of the building. I think we could do that for a reasonable amount of money. We could do the floor over, pull out the ceiling, industrialize it. We've talked about using concrete floor and staining it so we don't have that. It just needs to be reworked on the inside. We could cut down the cost on sod by not having, our guys could manage, if we're not going to use the heavy-duty stuff that requires the expertise, and we cut down on the expertise level for the sod, we fill in the blank areas for now so it's not barren with something that's acceptable, then we wouldn't need $30,000. I just think we need, and I agree that even if we do it temporarily, we have to have some sort of sodding. You can't continue with bare grass. So I think we have to put some money in sodding, look into what it would actually cost us to fill those spots that are bad, with something that would work. It's not going to be perfect. Save some of the money we're currently spending on high-maintenance stuff that we probably shouldn't have done in the first place, and then use some of that in the money inside the building to reduce part of the interior of the building. That's what I think might be helpful, but those are my thoughts. Commissioner Ross.
So for a long time, as he says, we installed it, we didn't really maintain it until it got really horrible, and then we did knee jerk and did intense repair, and then it deteriorated again. But in the last 2 years, we actually budgeted to have it properly maintained with a contract with the ballpark or whatever the company was. But we didn't have management in place to manage that contract. So although we budgeted $18,000, the calls weren't made, the appointments weren't made, and then we ended up not spending the $18,000. Great, we saved money, but we killed the grass. Whatever it is that we're going to do, it's going to take some money. And whether it's if we have money left over for the interior, then that's a great idea. The interior definitely needs some attention. Or there could be equipment that people have been wanting us to install, like Vita equipment, a little exercise station or stuff like that. I would say, why don't we leave the $30,000 either at the rec, in the rec budget, or put it in contingency, give Issa 20 minutes to come up with a plan of what he thinks we should do over there, and then we could talk about exactly where we're going to spend the money. But I wouldn't eliminate the $30,000 because we have it and we know we need improvements.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't eliminate it, but I just don't want. Yeah, I just don't want it tied to that specific rezoning.
Right,
I think it
that's what
should
I was
be,
saying.
available.
So could we call it like capital improvements at the rec center?
Yeah.
I go for
something
that.
like
Yeah.
Mhm. And then combine that section. Yep. And I have a question on one of the lines, which is the vehicles. Could you expand a little bit about the van? Because I think it's currently only being used at this point by the aftercare program, and I know that's a maintenance draw. That's been kind of a drain. I'm not sure why we need the van. We've had it for years. I don't know, and I know we'll give you another 10 minutes for that. If you could look in that to see the reality of needing that. We have 2 public works vans. If you need to go somewhere or do something, I don't see a problem with that. I just don't, to me, that's just another old vehicle we're maintaining and having somebody else use, and it's liability, it's maintenance and repair. I'm just not sure we need it anymore.
Is our Gates still using that?
Yeah, Golden Gates is still using that.
But don't we charge them? Don't they pay us a
Haven't been.
fee for it?
That we haven't been collecting, my understanding.
In the past they did, and I know they fueled it themselves. The only concern I have about that is leaving us without a vehicle. It limits me and some of my future programming, which I would like to bring back, like the elderly field trips,
Okay.
and things like that. So
Okay.
unless I would love to start to work in the budget for replacing that van, because yes, it is. I think we're spending more money on it to keep it maintained than it's worth. Definitely.
Yeah, it's costing us more. That's what I'm wondering.
Giving us a good life. It has been here for a long time. So the other one is gone. The other one died some years ago when I was still here. So this is the sole survivor of those 2.
So in your 10, 20, 30 minutes that we've given you to assess the entire budget, as you're moving forward with this, I know we're going to have to put something in a lump here for you. Maybe you could work with the village manager and the finance manager to come up with how to best deal with it.
We in one of our many meetings had touched on that. Definitely we'll get those on.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
And also, Issa, since we brought it up and Commissioner Ross brought it up with whether or not Golden Gates is paying, if you can look at that contract and see what they're supposed to be doing.
I am reviewing all contracted services at the park. Everything is being reviewed at this moment, so we are playing catch up on a number of things, but definitely we'll have updates for them as they become available. And in the villages, the managers report weekly. You will see things start to get knocked off one by one.
And when you're looking at that, if you could also look at page 14 of 18, which is the special events The only one I was looking for really is the Winterfest. That just seemed to jump up. I think that maybe because we rented a bunch of vehicles, I'm not sure why the cost was that, but if you could look into that. I'm absolutely love Winterfest. I just want to make sure we're not just that those are allocated correctly, or maybe put a whole budget together for all of them in one giant pool, so you're not stuck if one goes up or down. Maybe just have an event pool, in the same way that we did the capital improvement, just to make sure that we're covered for that. That's my thoughts. I don't know if anybody agrees with me on that.
Just to elaborate on something earlier, I was trying to catch you all's attention with the North Miami Foundation. So they actually meet at the rec center once a month and bring a group there, and it's available to all of our residents.
Okay.
I think it's the third Friday of the month. So they bus a group there, but it's also open to all of our residents. So we also have that flyer there.
I saw that there, yeah.
This month it is dealing with memory loss or something. So it's some great activities that they do.
Okay.
So I definitely think we should keep that 2,500.
No, definitely. I misunderstood what it was for, so I totally withdraw that, so.
But yeah, those events are great.
Okay.
And again, we will start to better promote these things that are happening there, because that's something that we established before I left, and it's tied into our whole reaching out to the community and kind of tying that into awareness. So.
And the big ticket item for Winterfest was the bounce house. It was $2,000.
Do you have an objection?
More for $2,000 this year. I promise you that.
So maybe we can trim that a little. Thank you. And the education and training, I just thought maybe 500 was a more reasonable number, but you'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
That's all.
For the movie night, do we now own the screen and a projector? So then it would just be actually the cost of renting a movie.
Caesar, does the foundation own that, or do we own it? Do you know?
Village,
The village?
yeah, village.
If you needed it,
Yeah, that's significantly.
and I will donate a projection that I have to the village if you need another one. I have one at home, and I'm welcome to donate that to you all.
So that will come down to it. If that screen is ours and we can use that screen, then all we have to do is pay for the movie licensing. I think we're still trying to do those quarterly. So the movie
Yeah.
license is approximately like $300, give or take. So you're looking at that.
Depends on the movie, yeah, depends on the movie.
Depends on the
and-
movie, exactly.
So about 1,200, 1,500, something like that?
Finding Nemo 9 or something.
Okay. I think we've all been here. I think we've done a great first start to the budget. I want to first of all thank everybody this is always a very challenging thing to try and make sure we all stay in budget. So I thank everybody for their comments and their support, and staff as well, for all their hard work on the budget and their time. So thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
We are stand adjourned.